The wind sighed through the cracked tower windows, carrying the thin resinous scent of dawn-lit pines from the mountains below. Lyanna Stark lay propped against a mound of sun-bleached pillows, her raven hair damp with sweat, her fingers curled protectively around the sleeping babe nestled at her breast. Silence wrapped the Tower of Joy like fog. No horses stamping in the courtyard. No swords clashing in uneasy drill. No drums of war echoing beyond its pale stone. Only distant birdsong, tentative and timid, trilled through the stillness, as if the world itself held its breath. Lyanna studied her son's face, a perfect miniature of contradictions. Stark gray eyes beneath lashes dark as ink. Targaryen features softened by northern winters that had never yet touched him. The child suckled with tranquil determination, unaware of the legions that had bled for or against his existence, unaware that his mother's slender body had become a battlefield more consequential than fields strewn with fallen lords. Moonlight still lingered in the alcoves when footsteps sounded on the spiral stair, and Ned Stark entered, dust and exhaustion smudging the plains of his solemn face. He paused when he saw Lyanna awake, the babe in her arms. For an instant, relief melted the ice in his gaze. But sorrow returned swiftly, like a shadow refusing to yield to dawn. He crossed the chamber and knelt beside the bed. Lyanna traced a trembling hand along his jaw, feeling the unshaven prickle that years of campaign left behind. "Does Robert know?" she whispered. Even uttering the rebel king's name felt like summoning distant thunder. Ned swallowed. "He knows you're alive. That is victory enough for now." He did not say what else Robert Baratheon knew. Did not speak of the bonfires outside Storm's End where Rhaegar's ruby-strewn armor melted into slag, or of the bodies swinging outside King's Landing's broken gates. Lyanna watched his eyes and saw the words unsaid. "I named him Jon." She said softly, "After father's friend." Jon Connington was loyal to Rhaegar until the end, but he was a good man. Let loyalty be his blessing. Ned's mouth twitched. Ice and fire, bound by loyalty. He brushed a callous thumb over the babe's brow. "We have won a throne for Robert, but this child, he is Rhaegar's blood." "And mine," Lyanna reminded him, fierce as storm-tossed waves. "My blood. Stark blood. He is our pack's hope." She pulled Ned closer until his forehead touched hers. "Promise me, Ned. Promise me you'll keep him safe but not hidden. Let him stand someday as bridge between dragon and wolf, between north and south." Ned closed his eyes, hearing vows he had made only hours earlier. Vows that weighed heavier than any sword. "I swore to keep him. I did not swear to hide him forever." He drew a ragged breath. "But Robert's hatred will not fade because you live, sister. He lost Lyanna to the Dragon Prince, and though he now has you back, memories bite deeper than swords." Lyanna's laugh was fragile but unbroken. "Then we forge a new blade, brother. When the wolves howl beside the dragons, even Robert must listen." Summer deepened over Westeros, as ravens carried tidings of war's end. At Winterfell, banners of direwolf grey snapped alongside the crowned stag. Robert Baratheon, heavy-limbed, eyes both triumphant and hollow, arrived with an entourage of knights determined to drink every cask between Dorne and the Wall. Yet he dismounted before Lyanna with uncharacteristic trepidation, seeing her alive where he had expected only a grief-carved tomb in the crypts below. Lyanna stepped forward, her son in her arms. The courtyard fell silent. Even the wind seemed to kneel. Robert looked from her to the baby, recognition dawning in slow horror. "Rhaegar's," he choked. "Ours," Lyanna corrected, voice firm. "My son, Jon Dot. Son of ice, as much as fire." She met Robert's fury with steady calm. "Would you shed blood of an innocent babe just to sate old wounds?" Storm clouds gathered in Robert's eyes. His gauntlet creaked as he clenched it, but when Jon gurgled, a fragile, hopeful sound, Robert's shoulders sagged. He had sworn once to kill every Targaryen, yet before him stood a mother he loved, and a child whose eyes held no threat. The rebel king turned away sharply, fighting tears Warren Mead could never drown. "The realm needs peace," he muttered. "Burning babes will not bring it." Lyanna's relief was quiet. But Ned saw vindication flash like dawn across her face. She had staked her life on Robert's buried honor, and it had not betrayed her. Yet, cunning was required to guard that fragile mercy. In the solar that night, Lyanna, Ned, and Robert sat surrounded by maps stained in wine and blood. Lyanna's proposal astonished them both. "You would betroth him to Daenerys?" Robert thundered. "Another dragon whelp?" "Not a whelp, queen in exile." "She's but a child," Lyanna argued. "In time she will come of age in Essos. Jon and she together can mend the rift your war has torn. Ice and fire united." "Menawani." Robert snorted. "Targaryens wed kin. Perhaps your plan suits their madness." Lyanna's eyes glittered. Targaryen madness came from isolation, from pride. But when North and Dragon bind through love, the realm may heal. "Winter is always coming, Robert. Let us prepare warmth." Ned said little, yet in his mind he weighed duty against love, honor against pragmatism. He saw sense in Lyanna's vision, saw a chance to end centuries of distrust. Robert huffed and finally relented, more from devotion to Lyanna than strategy. "Very well," he grumbled. "But the world will call it folly." Lyanna's smile was winter sunlight, pale but enduring. "The world called you folly when you marched on King's Landing. Yet here you sit a king." Robert raised his cup in salute. "To folly then, may it outlive us all." Across the narrow sea, on Dragonstone's storm-lashed battlements, Prince Viserys Targaryen received a raven sealed with a direwolf's head and crowned stag. He read it thrice, each time paler. Beside him, Daenerys. Warren clutched a wooden toy dragon larger than her torso. Viserys almost tore the parchment apart, yet the words glittered with promise. Betrothal, alliance, safety from assassins that prowled their nightmares. "See, sweet sister," he whispered, dipping to her height. "Wolves and stags bicker, but they fear dragon fire. You will be their queen, one day." Daenerys tilted her silvery head. "Will I have real dragons?" Viserys forced a smile. "I will find you one." But his gaze slid to the dark horizon where storms birthed waves tall as keeps. Dragons were gone, and with them much of his birthright. Still, an alliance meant ships, gold, perhaps an army. He folded the letter carefully. If the North offered peace, Viserys would seize advantage. Ice could temper fire until it burned bright again. Years passed, measured by raven feathers and tourney trumpets. Jon Snow, though no bastard, the realm named him so for peace's fragile pretense, grew beneath Winterfell's towers, serious, swift, with a quiet intensity that set him apart from Robb, Theon, and the squabbling younger siblings that filled corridors with laughter. Daenerys, as Lyanna called him privately, a stark endearment melding northern cadence with Valyrian fragrance, rode through falling snow at 6, sword-trained under Sir Roderick by 8, fluent in halls of stone and stories alike. On evenings when hearthfires painted ceilings gold, Lyanna told him of dragons, how they once soared above Harrenhal, melting towers like wax. How Aegon the Conqueror forged 7 kingdoms with 3 beasts. Yet she also recounted northern myths. The last hero trudging through endless night, direwolves circling as guardians of forgotten kings. "You are the song of both," she whispered, pressing her nose against his dark curls. "Remember that harmony is strength, not weakness." In the Eyrie, wards of House Arryn trained with Robb. Somewhere beyond the narrow sea, Daenerys completed her 10th name day. She and Jon exchanged letters via secret channels, parchment that smelled of myrrh and pine, sealed by a direwolf stamped in argent wax, and a dragon inked in crimson. Childish at first, descriptions of direwolf pups and Dragonstone's black basalt cliffs, their words matured with them, weaving shared dreams over leagues of uncertain sea. Daenerys described a red comet streaking dawn skies, while Jon recounted auroras dancing above the wall. One day Jon wrote, "We will see both together. Comet and aurora. Two lights sharing the same sky." She tucked that line beneath her pillow, repeating it like prayer. But peace is a garden, oft invaded by weeds. In King's Landing, Varys the Spider sifted whispers of a hidden prince, son of dead Rhaegar and living Lyanna. Cersei Lannister, now queen, gutted the Northern Pact with distrust. She saw in every raven's wing the promise of lost power. In every northern feast, a betrayal. Robert, grown heavy with wine yet lighter of patience, dismissed her fears until one night he staggered into the small council chamber, clutching a letter from Balon Greyjoy. A letter promising ironborn ships to any queen bold enough to shatter fragile alliances. Cersei's jealousy ignited like wildfire. She demanded Jon Snow brought south as hostage, a guarantee of northern loyalty. Ned, newly appointed hand, refused outright. The throne room rang with echoes of past swords as arguments clashed anew. Robert balked at harming Lyanna's child, but his will dripped from him like rain off rusted steel. Lyanna traveled to King's Landing with Jon at her side. The city, still scarred by sack, murmured when she rode through gate and alley. She faced the Iron Throne like winter standing before summer. "He is promised," Lyanna declared. Voice calm yet resonant, "To Daenerys Targaryen." "By your own hand, Robert," Cersei sneered. "Promises break as easily as bones." Lyanna's gaze did not waver. Not stark promises. The court held its breath. Robert's jowls quivered. Finally he slammed a fist upon the armrest, gold and iron clanging. "Enough. The boy returns north. The queen will hold her tongue." His decree settled like weary snow, but seeds of dissent had been sown. Beyond the wall, omens stirred. Rangers spoke of white shadows dancing between frost-gloom trunks. Maester Luwin consulted dusty scrolls none had read in centuries, his fingers trembling on cracked vellum. "The long night comes again," he murmured to Lyanna beneath Winterfell's weirwood. "Your son may be the blade that was broken, and will be forged anew." Lyanna listened, her breath misting. She thought of Jon's betrothal, of dragons asleep across the sea. If winter marched, then perhaps fire must ride to meet it. She summoned Ned, Robb, and even young Arya, who eavesdropped from rafters. "We must prepare," she said, "not just for Cersei's envy or Ironborn raid. Something older, colder." Her eyes flicked to Jon sparring in the yard. Sparks flew when his practiced sword struck Robb's. In Bravos, the Sea Lord hosted a discreet meeting between emissaries of Dragonstone and Winterfell. Ser Jorah Mormont, exiled heir, arrived with parchment signed by Viserys, accepting Jon's hand for Daenerys when both reached 16. In exchange they sought safe passage, dragon eggs rumored to lie in vaults of Pentos, and invitations from Maester Illyrio Mopatis to mediate. The North agreed, uninterested in associate intrigues, yet keen on hatching alliances as carefully as dragon eggs. Jon devoured seafaring manuals in anticipation of the voyage that would one day carry him to Daenerys. Yet before he could sail, Greyjoy sails cut the sunset off the western horizon. Castle Black sent urgent ravens, wildlings massed, not to raid but to flee something sweeping from far north. Ned marched south to calm Robert's court. Lyanna prepared the north for war unknown. Jon, only 14 but tempered beyond years, asked leave to ride for the wall. Lyanna hesitated between mother's fear and queen's duty. "Take Ghost," she said finally, fastening the wolf's head cloak about his shoulders. "Remember, you are the song, ice and fire. At the wall, you'll meet ice full force. Hold fast until fire arrives." She pressed her lips to his brow. Somewhere Daenerys lit a candle within Blackwater Bay's mirror image, its flame small, defiant against encroaching dusk. Cersei seized Ned the moment he re-entered King's Landing. Accusations flew. Treason, conspiracy with dragons. While Ned languished in cells redolent of damp stone, Robert hunted boars in Storm's End forests, seeking respite from politics he no longer could command. A tusk gored him, and in his delirium Robert called for Lyanna. not Cersei, leaving the queen poisoned with rage more fatal than any wound. Robert's deathbed decree named Jon his heir, citing ancient pact to merge houses. Cersei tore the parchment and crowned Joffrey before the ink dried on Robert's final breath. War once more threatened to rend the realm, but this time lines blurred. The North rallied around Lyanna and Robb, yet refused open rebellion, stating they marched only to retrieve Ned. Catelyn Stark sailed south to treat with Renly and Stannis, carrying quiet offers: recognition of Jon's claim in exchange for peace. Stannis, lawful above all, considered. Renly, charming yet shrewd, saw opportunity. While Southron lords squabbled, Lyanna dispatched ravens across the sea. "Come," she wrote to Daenerys. "Westeros needs you before winter devours us all." Daenerys, 15 and determined, left Dragonstone under black sails. She bore 3 stone eggs gifted by Illyrio, warmth pulsing faintly within. Viserys fumed at being excluded from Lyanna's letter. He believed the crown his by right, but Ser Jorah counseled caution. Their fleet skirted storms that lashed stepstones, landing at White Harbor where snowflakes kissed Daenerys' cheeks for the first time. She shivered, but Jon, waiting on the quay, banished chill with a smile wrought of both Stark reserve and Targaryen fire. Their meeting was not storm of passion nor ceremony of thrones, but something quieter, deeper. They walked through White Harbor's lantern-lit streets, discussing wolves, ships, myths. Ghost trotted beside them, sniffing Daenerys with pink-tongued curiosity. She laughed, and the direwolf accepted her as though recognizing ancient kinship. As nights lengthened, they rode to Winterfell together. Hearths welcomed Dragon Princess with cautious warmth. Bran clamored for dragon stories. Arya challenged Daenerys to archery, winning a grin by thudding 2 arrows dead center. Sansa measured royal etiquette against northern directness, discovering Daenerys possessed grace without condescension. Lyanna watched the young pair wander Godswood in hush of first snow, and she felt hope grow like green shoots under winter frost. Yet omens darkened still. Jon received a parchment from the wall. Benjen missing, rangers slain by creatures that did not die even when speared through heart. Eyes blue as shattering ice. Jon's dreams grew strange, visions of burning swords, snowfields erupting in dragonfire, Daenerys riding beside him through ash that glimmered like falling stars. While the north fortified, King's Landing seethed. Joffrey's cruelty drew blood. Sansa, hostage, endured. Ned, silent steel, refused false confessions that would brand Lyanna and Jon traitors. Varys visited in dusk, speaking of spiders and songs. "The realm may survive many broken oaths, my lord," he whispered, "but not winter's teeth. Ice demons care nothing for crowns." Mendawind. In flea-bottom taverns, whispers spread of a Stark queen with wolf's heart and dragon's child crossing seas. Cersei's spies carried tales of Daenerys welcomed at Winterfell. Her fury summoned pyromancers, wildfire stockpiled beneath sept and stable, ready to drown rebellion in green flame. But wildfire's hunger is never sated. It waits to burst through stone like reborn dragons. Renly mustered Rainbow Guard. Stannis forged letters of incest, revealing Joffrey's unsound claim. Robb led northern hosts south, not to wear a crown but to rescue father and sister. Jon remained behind at Winterfell under Lyanna's command, yet his eyes looked ever north. Daenerys sensed his restlessness, and on the eve of Robb's march, she found Jon alone in the glass gardens. Warmth of torches shimmered across panes. "You wish to ride to the wall?" she stated. Jon exhaled frost. "Duty is the price of blood." He studied her profile. Moonlit. "But my heart, it is yours." He reached for her hand. The dragon egg she wore on a golden chain glowed faintly when his palm covered hers. Heat radiated like trapped sunrise. "I will go with you," Daenerys said. He shook his head. "The wall is no place for a lady of dragons." She lifted her chin. "Then not as a lady. A rider." She opened her cloak, revealing leather suited for travel, not court. Jon smiled, sudden and fierce. They would ride together. Ice and fire meeting the dark. Lyanna approved, though fear lurked in her eyes. She gave Daenerys a copper torque, shaped like direwolf and dragon entwined. "Return with him," she said, "or not at all." They set forth under aurora veils dancing violet and green, the world whispering secrets older than men. Ghost-led, paused silent upon new-formed snow. The wall rose, alabaster leviathan, as if the gods had thrust a blade of frozen moonlight into earth. At Castle Black, Lord Commander Jorah Mormont gaped at sight of silver-haired maiden on northern stallion. "By the Seven," he muttered, "the realm truly changes." Jon took vows that night, but not those of Black Cloak. A new order formed, watchmen of the bridge, oath-bound to guard the living from dead, yet free to wed dragonfire to ice. Daenerys placed her palm upon a block of weirwood carved with twin sigils. Blue flame ignited on contact, consuming nothing. Jon felt power hum between them, a cord plucked upon cosmic lyre. Ravens screamed from night sky. Dead things approached, tall, gaunt, armored in frost. First battle erupted beneath the wall's shadow. Swords of dragonglass shattered their unnatural flesh. Daenerys flung lanterns of oil, and ghosts tore white fingers from twilit grips. But numbers swelled like tide. Jon's blade clanged against ice spears. Breath crystallized, lungs seared with cold older than memory. Atop the wall, Maester Aemon, frail, blind, last dragon of his age, heard the clamor and remembered Summerhall's flames. He summoned Jon and Daenerys to chamber thick with scrolls. "You are the song," he rasped, milky eyes shining. "But song needs instrument. Under Dragonstone's bricks sleeps fire reborn. Seek it." Namshi. Jon and Daenerys exchanged a glance, understanding sealed. They rode south again, pursuing myth. Every village whispered of winter things stalking fields, of lions squabbling with wolves, while the dark crept in. By the time they reached White Harbor, Robb's army had clashed with Jaime Lannister at Whispering Wood, taking the Kingslayer captive. Rumor flew faster than ravens. Stark's triumphant, but father still caged. Daenerys urged speed, but Jon insisted they sail east first. Winter may devour Westeros, unless dragons answered call. They boarded Sea Raven, hull creaking under salt white frost. Sir Davos Seaworth, sent by Stannis to escort Stark envoys, captained with smuggler's skill. Across cold waves, they braved storms. Stars like shards of broken ice above. On Dragonstone's black sand shore, visories awaited with ragged dignity, and a crown of twisted bronze he'd forged from melted soldier helms. He greeted Jon and Daenerys surrounded by Golden Company mercenaries. "Sister," he hissed, gaze flicking to Jon. "Our allies arrive late." Daenerys stepped forward. "Brother, lay down bitterness. The world needs unity." Namshati. Viserys' laugh cracked. "Unity, under my crown." He gestured, swords unsheathed. Jon's hand moved to hilt, but Daenerys raised a calming palm. She unfastened her egg from chain, holding it aloft. "Blood of the dragon chooses its own ruler," she declared. She approached the brazier in the courtyard's heart, embers glowing faint. She placed the egg upon coals, then stepped into flames. Viserys shouted. Mercenaries recoiled. Fire roared skyward, illuminating night. Jon's heartbeat thundered. When smoke cleared, Daenerys stood unburnt, hair streaming like living silver. Cracks lined the egg. A piercing shriek split air as a hatchling clawed into world. Midnight scales, eyes blazing gold. The dragon unfurled wings, perched upon Daenerys' shoulder. Viserys fell to knees, terror and awe strangling breath. Jon moved to Daenerys, bowing head against hers. Dragon smell, like brimstone and dawn, filled the courtyard. "Drogon," she named him, tears tracking smoke-smudged cheeks. She turned to mercenaries. "Will you follow your rightful queen?" Swords knelt. Viserys, choking on broken pride, attempted to strike, but Golden Company seized him. Daenerys watched with sorrow as brother was escorted to chambers. Promises of gentle exile ringing hollow. Word of dragon birth stormed across seas, reaching King's Landing where wildfire caches hissed in hidden tunnels. Cersei doubled the bounty on Jon's head. Joffrey demanded Daenerys dragon caged. But in the Riverlands, Robb Stark marched ever closer, banners of blue-eyed direwolf snapping. The sight of dragon in Horizon's gory dawn unnerved even veteran knights. Some whispered Azor Ahai reborn. Stannis Baratheon, stern yet pragmatic, sailed to Dragonstone to see Miracle himself. He met Jon and Daenerys in throne room, once held by coal-eyed Maegor. Light from stained glass windows painted Stannis in shards of crimson and tourmaline. Melisandre shadowed him, red gown whispering, eyes reflecting flame like twin rubies. She regarded Jon with unnerving interest. "Two, become one to forge light," she murmured. Azor Ahai wields sword forged of living fire. Jon's hand rested on hilt, but Daenerys interjected. "Swords cannot stop winter alone. We need alliances." She proposed Grand Council at Riverrun, North, Dragonstone, Stormlands, even Dorne, to reject Cersei and confront White Walkers. Stannis considered. He possessed lawful claim, yet prophecy's talons tugged at iron will. "You would ask me to kneel. I ask you to survive," Jon answered. "Kingship matters little to the dead." Stannis' jaw flexed. Finally, he nodded once. "Council then." Melisandre smiled, flames dancing in her pupils. Ravens flew like silver arrows. At Riverrun banners converged. Baratheon mustard stag, Stark direwolf grey, Tully leaping fish, Martell sunspear, Tyrell golden rose, albeit cautiously. Even Tyrion Lannister arrived under white flag, mind sharp despite shackled wrists. Dragons circled above, small still but growing, their shadows sliding across tents. Inside Riverrun's great hall, Lyanna sat at head of table, ice blue gown trimmed with direwolf fur. To her right Ned, freshly freed in secret trade orchestrated by Varys, though news still hidden from Joffrey. To her left, Daenerys, Drogon coiled around shoulders. Jon stood between them, sword sheathed in dragon leather. Tywin Lannister did not attend, but his envoy delivered terms. Peace in exchange for recognition of Joffrey. The hall laughed bitterly. Princes of Dorne proposed marriage between Arianne Martell and Robb to seal desert and north. Tyrell sought guarantee of fertile reach trade. Arguments echoed like hammer on anvil, until dawn's light seeped through slits. Jon pounded table once, silence falling. "Winter marches," he said, voice low but carrying. "Dead walk. I have seen them. Dragons alone will not suffice. We must stand shoulder to shoulder or perish bone beside bone." "Memsah." He told tale of cold eyes, of ranger screams swallowed by white blizzard. He described heat of dragonfire melting frostflesh, but also exhaustion burning men's hearts. As he spoke, snowflakes drifted past arrow loops, though rivers still ran deep summer. The hall shivered. Lyanna rose. "By Stark blood and Baratheon vow, by Targaryen flame, we propose union of ice and fire this very night. Jon of House Stark Targaryen will wed Daenerys of House Targaryen, in sight of old gods and new. Let their marriage bind our houses, our armies, our hopes." "And now," murmurs rippled. Fear, awe, acceptance. Robb grasped Arya's hand, eyes bright. Stannis exhaled like Smith at cooling forge. Tyrion muttered, "Well, that simplifies the lineage charts." The wedding was swift and ancient. Beneath weirwood transplanted to Riverrun's Godswood centuries ago, Jon and Daenerys clasped hands. Bran recited words as Maester Luwin watched, eyes wet. Lyanna braided wolfbone and dragon scale into lover's hair. When they kissed, Drogon roared. Flames spiraling skyward, snowflakes hissing to mist. Nightfall cloaked camps when horns blasted. Wights swarmed from river mists, ice spiders dragging carriages, pale giants wielding bone clubs. Chaos erupted. Tyrell knights trampled reach banners to form shield wall. Dornish spears flashed. Melisandre thrust hands skyward, red fire swirling to meet white cold. Drogon soared, and smaller dragons Rhaegal and Viserion answered, loosing torrents of fire across undead ranks. Jon carved path with Valyrian steel gifted by Stannis, Lightbearer reborn, blade shimmering candlewhite. Daenerys rode Drogon above, commanding burning rain upon frost-sheathed cavalry. Robb rallied men, arrow shafts blotting moon. The battle raged until dawn, when first rosy finger touched horizon and white shrieked, retreating like tide. After, river-run ground steamed beneath mingled blood and snowmelt. Survivors limped among shattered siege engines. Yet hearts beat. Alliance held. In council afterward, Tyrion calculated grim numbers, but conceded victory, owed to Dragon's flame. Melisandre prophesied that this skirmish foretold greater storm. Jon and Daenerys pledged to ride north at once. At King's Landing, Cersei watched wildfire glow beneath Red Keep, her madness mirrored in green luminescence. Qyburn brought news of dragons allied with wolves. Cersei smiled thinly. Let them come, we will drown sky in green. Within dungeons, she showed Sansa stark charred bones of traitors, promising same should wolves near city. Yet Sansa's gaze remained distant, dreaming of northern snows and dragon wings blotting sun. As year turned, winter roared full. Jon and Daenerys led combined host. Stark, Baratheon, Martell, Tyrell, toward the wall. Ned and Lyanna oversaw defenses at Winterfell, forging obsidian blades in ancient crypts, coating arrowheads with dragon-glass dust. Bran trained ravens to scout beyond horizon. Arya practiced dance of swords taught by Syrio Forel, swearing to cut darkness itself. At Eastwatch by the Sea, Jon stood upon battlements gazing into pale night. Daenerys joined, cloak snapping. They gather, he murmured. Then we break them, she replied, fingers entwining with his. Drogon shimmered in moonlight behind them, eyes burning like twin embers. Jon felt heartbeats synchronize with dragons, the rhythm of fire forging ice into tempered steel. Far north, the Night King raised hands. Blue auroras swirling. Armies of silent death trudged beneath shattered moonlight. The stage was set, ice and fire, union wrought through love, poised upon brink of annihilation or salvation. And in Tower of Joy's abandoned chamber, spider webs veiling cracked stones, a single rose lay dried, memorial to promises kept and wars yet won. Okay. Night fell like a black iron curtain across the world, muting the living to quiet breaths and lonely watchfires that throbbed atop the wall's jagged-toothed crown. At Eastwatch by the Sea, the spray of a gray, wrathful ocean hissed against ice buttresses, and lanterns guttered like dying stars in the wind. Yet the great fort's ramparts were far from still. Men of every banner moved in uneasy concert, rangers in patched black leathers, Stormlander spearmen, Dornish archers with sun-dye scarves wrapped against the killing cold. Tyrell engineers adjusted scorpions along the battlements, whispering over gears that chattered from frost. Beneath them, dragon-glass mines carved in Dragongate's cellars rang to the hammer song of smiths, who shaped new blades by the hundred. Jon Snow paced the parapet with heavy strides, ghost at his heel. White fur rhymed with hoarfrost. Breath plumed from his lips in spectral bursts, vanishing before it reached the dark sea below. He paused beside a lantern to reread the latest raven from Winterfell. Lyanna's cramped, stark hand noting that supplies had set off from White Harbor, escorted by Manderley longships, and that Maester Luwin believed the obsidian lodes beneath the old Barrowlands could yield thrice the weapons they had expected. Jon's gloved thumb lingered over the closing line. The gods are watching, Daenerys. Make them proud. Daenerys, his mother's secret endearment, stirred something warm at the core of the chill that swathed him. He folded the parchment and tucked it against his heart. War songs of clashing steel drifted up from the courtyard. But beyond the wall the night was a depthless hush, broken only by the creak of ancient ice and the distant groan of something vast stirring within the storm-shrouded dark. The enemy was out there. He could feel it as surely as he felt the dragonfire in his blood. Bootsteps approached. Daenerys in a mantle of snow-white bear fur over scaled leather. Drogon's form swept overhead, briefly eclipsing the welkin as he banked low. His wing beats thunder in Jon's bones. The great beast perched on a basalt crag outside the wall. Eyes ember bright, steam swirling from his nostrils. Rhaegal and Viserion circled above. Smaller but growing, their cries echoing like distant horns of war. Daenerys reached Jon's side, her gloved fingers brushing his arm. The wind shifts, she said, voice pitched low so only he could hear. Rhaegal senses something moving, far off but nearer than yesterday. Frost crusted the silver wisps that escaped her hood. She smelled faintly of smoke and pine, of long rides and sleepless counsel. Jon looked north. Nothing but darkness, yet a prickle ran the length of his spine. They choose their hour. When they come, it will be swift. She studied him, candlelight catching the lavender cast of her eyes, and lowered her voice further. Viserys grows restless. He dislikes being penned behind these walls. Jorah keeps him occupied drilling the mercenaries, yet I fear his patience runs thin. He must hold, Jon replied. If Viserys rides south now, thinking to snatch a throne while the dead march, he'll doom himself and the realm. Daenerys' gaze drifted to the sea where torches bobbed on the decks of longships. I spoke with Melisandre. She says we all play pieces upon a board the Lord of Light sets. I do not like being anyone's piece. Jon reached for her hand. We choose our own moves, Daenerys. Prophecies guide only so far. Below, the gate chains clanged. Jon leaned over the parapet. A column of black-cloaked riders filed beneath. Benjen Stark at their head, face gaunt, beard ice-flecked. Flanking him strode wildlings under Tormund Giantsbane, their spears tipped in obsidian. Behind them, walkers dragged sleds piled high with strange cargo. Corpse limbs wrapped in rawhide, heads bound in thick cloth. Jon's stomach tightened. Proof of horror. He would need such grisly tokens to persuade even the doubters in their war council. The horn on the gatehouse gave a single long moan. Rangers returning. Men along the ramparts raised fists in salute. Benjen's dark eyes lifted, met Jon's, and gave the barest nod. A second horn blast sounded, one higher and quavering with urgency. Silence fell. A third blast did not come, but even spared. The men tensed. 2 meant wildlings returning as allies. 3 would have meant others. Jon exhaled slowly. For now, only brothers. In the Lord Commander's Hall, Onsjur Mormonds, now held by the Wall's new triarchy of Stark Targaryen Baratheon command. A war council gathered around a table littered with frost-stiffened maps. Flickering tallow cast jittery shadows over richly diverse faces. Lyanna Mormont, small yet fierce, representing Bear Island. Davos Seaworth, with his honest seafarer's gaze. Jon Royce, armor etched with bronze runes. Prince Doran's envoy Maester Caliot. Benjen stood before them, road dust still powdering his boots. He unwrapped a leather parcel and slid it onto the map. Dot. A severed hand, pale as old milk, fingers cramped into claws. Gasps rippled. The flesh seemed to crawl with its own frigid life, and a faint mist rose from the stump. Taken 3 nights ago, Benjen said, voice rough. 2 of my rangers dead before we killed it. Dragonglass stopped the thing. Fire finished it. Viserys leaned closer, repulsion warring with curiosity. And you want to fight these creatures in their own snow-cloaked wastes? Madness. We stand between them and every warm soul in Westeros. Benjen replied. Madness or duty, Prince, take your pick. Melisandre's eyes glittered ruby in the candle glow. They are shadow-given flesh, servants of the great other. Only light can unmake them. Viserys scoffed softly. You would burn the north entire to achieve that. Davos cleared his throat, ever peacemaker. We cannot burn what we would save. Dragonglass and Valyrian steel, and dragonfire. He inclined his head to Daenerys. That's our best hope. Benjen rolled out a newer map, ink still glossy. of the haunted forest and frost fangs. He marked X's where patrols went missing, circles where whites were sighted. They are driving a spearhead southwest. Their numbers swell with every wildling village they take. If they breach the wall at this coast gate, Eastwatch becomes tomb. From there, nothing stops them sweeping down the neck. Then now, Lyanna Mormont thumped a tiny fist. Then we break the spear at the tip. Viserys' lips curled. Words from a girl who will fight beside a hearth. Lyanna rose to her full scant height, green eyes blazing. I'll stand in the shield wall before you ever do, Prince. Chairs scraped, tension flared like powder. Jon raised a hand. Enough. We cannot bleed strength on quarrels. Benjen, what do you propose? Bendendi. Arranging, large but swift. Strike their vanguard before it amasses. Use dragonglass arrows, fire pots. If dragons fly overhead, we might rout them. Viserys leaned back, arms crossed. And if the dragons fall from the sky? Lose them here and any claim we hold south dies with them. Daenerys turned, voice soft yet edged. If we do nothing, there will be no south to claim. Jon laid a gloved finger on the map, tracing a half circle. We lure them here, to Hardhome's ruins. The cliffs pen them against the sea. Fleet off the coast rains fire arrows. Dragons strafe from above. We cut off withdrawal, hammer them against rock and water. Davos nodded slowly. Blackwater tactics, reversed. Exactly, Jon said. He glanced at Daenerys, and an unspoken current passed. Viserys drummed fingers. You speak as if command is yours, Snow. It is, Melisandre intoned. By birth, by fire, by prophecy. Viserys' face purpled. Before he could spew venom, Jorah Mormont placed a heavy hand on his shoulder, murmuring close. Whatever words passed cooled the prince's temper, for now. The council set to logistics. How many barrels of lamp oil could be spared? Which houses would send archers? The rations each soldier must carry for a march through waist-high snow. By midnight, the plan of Hardhome was inked and sealed. As candles guttered, Jon lingered, staring at the white's hand until frost on his eyelashes melted into tears. He did not notice. Daenerys touched his elbow and drew him out into the night. Snowflakes spun in slow, hypnotic spirals, gentler than the storm fronts that often battered the wall. Jon guided Daenerys along the silent eastern walkway to a tower slitted with arrow loops. Inside, a single brazier burned. Ghost slunk in and curled before the coals, eyes half closed. Jon closed the oak door, muffling the gale. A moment's peace, he whispered. Daenerys sighed, shoulders dropping the weight of crowns not yet forged. He peeled off fur gloves, flexing fingers stiff from cold and counsel. She removed her hood, moon-white hair tumbled free. They stood a while, simply breathing each other's presence. Viserys will move against you, Jon said at last. Perhaps not today, but soon. He fears being eclipsed. She answered. And he will be, unless he chooses a different light to stand in. I pity him, but cannot spare strength. Jon's gaze fell to her hands, fine-boned, the skin chapped by wind yet dusted with soot from tending Drogon's harness. He took them in his. When war ends, when ice is broken, what then? The Iron Throne? A council of kingdoms? I know your heart burns for justice, and for the people. She searched his eyes. I once dreamed of the throne because it was all left me after exile. But dreams change. Since I stepped through fire, and it did not burn me, I have sought not power itself, but the means to end cycles of cruelty. If we survive the night to come, perhaps we can build something new. Perhaps the kingdom will not need an iron chair. Bendewa. Jon exhaled, relieved to hear in her voice, not the tyrant, but the healer. He drew her into his arms. Her cheek rested over the direwolf pelt on his shoulders. Ghost's tail thumped once, content. Outside, the sea pounded the foot of the wall, a slow heartbeat of the world. Above the crack and whisper of ice, a distant horn sounded, one long note, then another. Jon stiffened, listening. 2 blasts. Wildlings returning. He relaxed marginally. Daenerys closed her eyes again. The third blast never came that night. Morning's gray wash found the gathering army readying to march. Fields east of Eastwatch were churned a rutted slurry beneath hundreds of hooves. Wagons groaned with barrels of pitch, crates of obsidian arrows, coils of rope. Wildlings in leathers rubbed elbows with gold cloaks loaned by Stannis, their suspicions bridged by shared cups of sour beer. Over it all soared dragons. 3 dark comets leaving contrails of snow wisps. Every gaze followed them. Hope and dread intertwined. Jon rode at the fore on a shaggy white destrier, long claws sheathed across his back. Benjen took the left wing, Davos the right with Stormlander scouts. Daenerys approached astride a dun mare, Viserys beside her on a pale courser, the Golden Company standard fluttering behind. Jon offered Viserys a curt nod. The prince barely returned. Drums boomed, horns blasted. The column set off, 2,000 strong, vanishing into the haunted forest's throat. Trees soon swallowed them, boughs heavy with ice, branches arching to form cathedrals dripping crystalline chandeliers. Sound dampened. Even hoofbeats seemed to sink into moss and snow. Rangers spread like black shadows ahead, marking trail wounds on trunks for the supply train. Wind hissed through fir needles like secrets told by ghosts. By the second night's camp, they reached the edge of Hardhome's valley. Fires winked below, illuminating charred husks of shanties half buried by snowdrifts. The distant beach gleamed under pale moon, littered with wrecks of longships. They bivouacked among rock outcrops, posting double watches. Jon had tents arranged in a circle with a fire pit at its center, the command tent at northmost point. Inside, a hush fell when Viserys entered unbidden, Jorah at his shoulder. Eyes flicking across the maps, Viserys declared, "The Golden Company should form the vanguard tomorrow. Sell swords will test spear on dead men before I stake Targaryen blood." Jon's jaw hardened. "The Golden Company will flank with Dornish bowmen. Northern spears hold center. Dragons strike top down." Viserys's grin was brittle. "You forget whose banners forged this alliance." "I forget nothing," Jon said quietly. "But the dead care naught for banners and will break any line foolish enough to stand alone." Denial flashed, but Jorah spoke first. "My prince, trust the strategy. We'll have glory enough when victory's won." Viserys' nostrils flared. "I trust only Valyrian steel." He spun and left in a swirl of cloak. Jorah lingered, his look apologetic, then followed. Daenerys exhaled, tension rippling from her shoulders. "Keep watch on him," Jon murmured to Davos. The smuggler inclined his head and slipped out. Ghost padded from the tent's rear flap, low growl rumbling. Jon frowned, senses pricking. Something unnatural pressed in on the night. An unseasonal stillness, too absolute. He strode outside, scanning the tree line. Frost plume curled from his lips, and then dissipated before his eyes reached it, sucked away by cold far beyond winter's norm. The ground fog thickened. Torches sputtered blue. Soldiers stirred, unease chattering teeth louder than the chill. A horn started to sound. One note only. The hornblower crumpled, throat slashed by talon of crawling frost. Out of the mist glided figures tall and slender, eyes lit with cerulean fire. "Stand to arms," Jon bellowed, voice cracking the stillness. Chaos erupted. The first wave struck like a blizzard of razors. Whites hurled themselves upon pikes, limbs severed but crawled on. Obsidian spearheads shattered them, yet every fallen brother became 2 more, as the dead behind climbed over remains. Jon cleaved neck from torso again and again until black ichor slicked his gloves and froze. Vengeance Rangers loosed arrows of dragonglass that glimmered like black starlight, dropping whites in clusters. Wildling axes flashed. Stormlander maces rose and fell. But the tide pressed, endless. Then came the others. Gleaming armor of ice, blades smoking with cold. One swept into the line near Davos, each cut freezing steel and flesh alike. Jon charged, Longclaw's Valyrian ripples catching faint light. Their swords met with a crack like glaciers calving. Shock rippled up Jon's arms, but he pivoted, drawing the other away from clustered men. They danced amid torch shadows, Jon's heart pounding, the others silent as the grave. Sparks flew, freezing midair into new snow. Finally Jon fainted high, rolled under a slash, and brought Longclaw down through the knee seam. The other screamed, a sound of shattering glass, and exploded in a rain of ice shards. Cheers rose, faltered. From the ridge loomed more figures. Half a dozen white walkers astride skeletal elk, and behind them, a giant white wielding a massed trunk club. Jon's breath hitched. "Daenerys," he roared. As if summoned, the night split with thunderous wing beats. Drogon plummeted, jaws wide, disgorging a cataract of orange flame. Trees lit like torches. Whites blackened and crumbled. Rhaegal dove next, raking the giant's skull. Viserion swooped with high screech. Under dragon fire, the enemy lines sagged. But another figure rode forward. The Night King himself, haloed in frost, spear of crystal in hand. He hurled it skyward. It struck Viserion's chest with a sound like the world breaking. The dragon shrieked, wings locking. Blood of fire and ice sprayed, sizzling as it met air. Viserion spiraled, smashing into the frozen beach beyond. Silence crashed. Daenerys screamed lost to the roaring battle. Drogon banked hard, flames pulsing brighter, fury incarnate. Rhaegal followed. They scorched the ridgeline. But the Night King raised arms. Walls of blue flame erupted, frost resisting fire. In their clash, the very air tore with thunderclaps. Jon's eyes stung from smoke and snow. He forced a path toward fallen Viserion, ghost beside him. Debris and scattered dead blurred underfoot. He reached the crash site. Viserion sprawled across shattered ice, breaths ragged, blood steaming. The dragon's eye rolled to Jon, golden light flickering like candle in wind. Jon pressed a trembling hand to scorched scales. "Hold on, boy." He looked up, seeing whites advancing toward the wounded beast. "Not today." He whistled. Benjen appeared with a squad, forming guard. Obsidian arrows whistled, cutting first wave. Jon clambered along Viserion's shoulder, hacking at whites clawing the wing. Yet still they came. Overhead, Drogon battled frost storms conjured by the Night King. Rhaegal dove, but another crystal spear missed by a hair, slicing wing membrane and sending him listing. Daenerys guided Drogon in spirals, seeking opening. Jon locked eyes with her for an instant across the carnage. She pointed to a rise of black rock that jutted from ice. Bones of old volcano breaking frozen earth. Heat shimmered faintly. Steam puffed where fissures vented. Dragonstone blood. Jon understood. If they could lure the Night King atop living fire, frost might falter. He signaled Benjen. Rangers lit torches dipped in lamp oil, flinging them to create fiery channel. Jon mounted Viserion's neck, reckless. But he knew dragons heated Targaryen blood. "Up," he whispered. Somehow the great beast gathered strength, beating tattered wings, stumbling into a lurching glide that scattered dead. Benjen's men followed, guarding flanks. The Night King turned, chilling gaze fixing on rising dragon and rider. He nudged his undead steed, gliding low across snowdrifts, cold aura spilling. Jon felt marrow freeze but clutched scale ridge. Viserion landed atop the volcanic knoll, cracks glowing faint red beneath ice. Drogon swept overhead, drawing Night King's spear throw. It missed, clanging on stone. Jon leapt down, Longclaw ready. The Night King stepped onto the basalt shelf, frost curling around his boots, extinguishing ember vents. Cold dueled magma beneath. Their blades met, Valyrian steel against ice crystal, sparks of silver and midnight blue. Daenerys circled above, waiting. Rhaegal flanked from the seaside, bleeding but resolute. Jon's strength flagged, each parry numbing arms. The Night King's expression never shifted from eerie calm. Longclaw slid along crystal edge, emitting screams of tortured metal. Jon slipped on ice glaze, stumbled to one knee. The Night King raised sword for killing stroke. Flame roared. Drogon plunged, jaws pouring furnace heat. At the same instant, Molten springs burst from vents the Night King had sealed. Daenerys dragonfire detonating pressure. Scalding steam and liquid rock erupted, engulfing the foes. Jon rolled clear behind Viserion's sagging wing. The Night King shrieked, silhouette wavering in firestorm. Ice armor cracked. Crystal blade melted. He staggered, ablaze yet refusing to fall. Jon rose, chest heaving, and charged through sheets of steam. Longclaw plunged through smoldering ribcage, burying in heart of ice and shadow. For a heartbeat, time froze. Then the Night King shattered, a billion glass needles scattering into mist. A silence so profound Jon heard his own pulse followed. Across the valley, whites collapsed like marionettes with strings cut. Blue fires winked out. Snow fell again, gentle, unhurried. Drogon landed hard, wings drooping. Daenerys slid off, sprinted to Jon. He met her halfway amid swirling ash and snow. They clutched each other, foreheads touching. It was over. This battle, not the war, but the dead's vanguard lay broken. Behind them, Viserion's great head lifted weakly. Daenerys knelt, placing both palms upon his snout. Eyes of gold steadied. Flames licked from nostrils, a stubborn spark refusing extinction. Jon smiled through tears. He and Daenerys turned to survey the ruin. Frozen corpses thawing in pockets of molten snow. Men kneeling in disbelief. Dragons circling overhead, their roars echoing as victory's bells. Dawn's first light spilled over the wall's distant spine, illuminating a world scarred yet breathing. Jon breathed with it. In that breath lay promise. Of rebuilt kingdoms, of mended hearts, of a throne forged not of iron alone but of living blood and living fire. Bound at last. They buried their dead at Hardhome's cliffs, cairns of black stone crowned with pine branches. The living stood in lines 2,000 paces long, torches raised. Melisandre spoke prayer to the Lord of Light. The old gods were murmured in weirwood tongue. The seven received muttered verses. Flames consumed shrouds. Smoke drifted to sea, where gulls wheeled. Even Viserys stood silent, gaze fixed on curling embers. Snow began the long march south. 2 days later, an army diminished but unbroken. Ravens had flown ahead. The Night King slain, the dead faltering. Yet every man knew horror yet lingered. In caves, in frozen rivers, waiting for new master. Their victory was but reprieve. Not reprieve alone. Proof the darkness could bleed. At Molestown, caravans met them bearing fresh supplies and word from Winterfell. Cersei had ignited caches of wildfire beneath the demon pits of King's Landing, leveling half the city in a bid to destroy rumored cells of dissent. The city burned 3 days. Small folk fled by the thousands. Joffrey survived, but chaos reigned. Jon and Daenerys shared the news in a silent tent, reading by glow of a single candle. Daenerys' jaw tightened. Shall raise the world before yielding. And we are spent, Jon murmured. Dragons wounded, men weary. Yet we must go. She said, not as conquerors, liberators. No iron throne of ashes. Jon watched the candle flame. It flickered, resilient. Then we make for Winterfell, regroup. Stannis has forces near the Trident. Dorne and the Reach hold the King's Road. With dragon wings, we could be at the capital in days. But our people need us. Bend. She reached across maps, took his scarred hand. We lead them together, ice and fire. Outside, Rhaegal's call echoed across snowy fields, a high, mournful note that faded into dawn. Men lifted eyes, took courage anew. They would march, they would fight, they would heal. And somewhere beyond the horizon of war, spring waited, patient as all living things that dare the cold. Ghost trotted into the tent, muzzle dusted with frost. He nudged Jon's knee, amber eyes bright. Jon scratched behind his ear, and for a fragile heartbeat, he felt the world quietly right itself. But war's road stretched yet, winding south through fields soon to bloom with fire and blood alike. Their tale, song of wolf and dragon, was far from sung to the last verse. Still, as Jon Snow and Daenerys Stormborn stepped from the tent, wind lifting their joined cloaks, the camp stilled in reverent hush. For in these two, the battered freefolk and highborn knights, the scheming lords and humble masons, saw the promise Lyanna Stark had whispered at her son's birth. Ice and fire, not at war, but wed-bound, enduring. Ah, ha. Snow whispered across the king road like a pale serpent, coiling through boot prints and wagon ruts, softening hard edges of helmets and spear points, until the great host, southbound from the wall, resembled phantoms trudging through mist. Dawn bled slow peach onto a sky the color of tarnished steel, and wind carried a scent of distant pine, the first promise of the northern woodlands miles yet ahead. For weeks, the army had marched in disciplined segments, each day measured by the creak of axles and the muffled thunder of hooves. Each night defined by cramped encampments around timber palisades, hastily raised against scavengers and straggling wights the Night King's death had left mindless. Jon rode at the fore beside Daenerys, both cloaked in thick elk hide, dragon-scale greaves strapped over leathers, lacquered to keep out the wet. Drogon shadowed them overhead, broken clouds boiling around his wings, while Rhaegal and the healing Viserion glided farther back with the baggage train, watchful sentinels for raiders or opportunistic lords. The dragon's silhouettes, black on gray, lent the column a mythic aura that even the grimmest veteran could not deny. Men trudging within earshot whispered half prayers, half boasts, that no southern army could stand against such fire. Yet beneath the seeming invincibility strained uneasy sinews of intrigue. Viserys no longer quarreled openly, but his silence pulsed like a bruise. He kept to a mounted retinue of Golden Company outriders and an entourage of Essosi heralds, reviewing camp each twilight from a silken pavilion stitched with three-headed dragons. Rumor claimed he drafted proclamations, naming himself Prince of Dragonstone and Protector of the Realm, to be read at the gates of every city they entered. Jon trusted him as one might trust a frost-rimed lake in thaw. Crossable perhaps, but only with light, careful steps. That morning the column navigated a narrow defile where granite bluffs funneled wind into needles. Tormund Giantsbane laughed as gusts flattened his fox fur cloak, shouting bawdy encouragement to a line of Dornish spearmen cursing the cold. Davos rode rear guard, tallying losses of mule and man in a neat ledger, each name spoken to the parchment as though to the gods. Arya streaked past on a sturdy gelding, racing two wildling youths, needle-thin grin flashing, her new Braavosi blade strapped tight across her back. The host felt alive again, blood surging after the ruin of Hardhome, yet Jon sensed cracks beneath the vigor, places where fatigue might seep into defeat, if not reinforced. As Winterfell's ramparts finally hove into view, dark silhouettes crowned with rime, cries of welcome rippled forward, columns fanned out across fields pocked by old siege trenches, and horns on the battlements answered in clear hail notes. Jon's heart tightened at the sight of stone towers he had feared never to see again. He urged his horse into a gallop, Daenerys matching stride, and they passed beneath the yawning arch of the main gate, just as snow began to fall in earnest, thick flakes, swirling like ashes from an unseen fire. Within the courtyard, banners of gray and white and black and red fluttered together, improbable kin. Lyanna Stark descended the steps from the great hall, leather skirts brushing the new snow, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She embraced Jon first, arms fierce despite a lingering limp earned at Whispering Wood, and then drew Daenerys close, pressing her brow to the younger woman's in silent approval. Behind her, Ned Stark emerged, gaunter but unbowed after his captivity. The gathered soldiers quieted as their eyes fell upon the man they believed dead. His sons and daughters rushed him, chain shirts and snow-soaked cloaks clattering. For a breath, all war vanished into joyous clamor. Jon relinquished horse and sword, but Daenerys held his hand when the crush of greetings subsided. They followed Ned and Lyanna toward the great hall, slipping beneath carved lintels into warmth that smelled of oak smoke, bread, fresh rushes. In the shadows near the hearth, Beric Dondarrion and Lady Melisandre conferred over a brazier's low flames, the Red Priestess's ruby pulsing to unheard words. Bran sat in a wheeled chair at the center of a half-circle of maesters and wildling wise women. Star charts spread on hides across his knees. He looked up as they entered, a knowing solemnity flickering in his gaze that both comforted and unnerved Jon. The hall doors boomed shut. Ned nodded to guards, then unrolled a fresh map across the high table. The kingdoms rendered in inks of jade and rust, blotches of fresh crimson marking Cersei's wildfire devastation. "King's Landing is half ashes," he said, voice hoarse yet steady. "The Septi imploded. Fleabottom burns still in places. Lannister levies flood the city, but small folk riot nightly. Joffrey's cruelty makes Robert's worst moods seem gentle." His gray eyes hardened. "Sansa writes that she survives by compliance, but her letters come fewer, either for want of quills or deeper threat." Daenerys studied the map. "A city in chaos is both hazard and opportunity. If the dragons fly above a starving populace, they might cheer freedom or panic into slaughter. We must tread carefully." Lyanna pointed to King's Landing's northern approach. "Stannis holds the trident. He'll join once his siege engines arrive from Storm's End. Renly, her mouth twisted, has disbanded at Bitterbridge, his bannermen peeling off to defend their own lands. Tyrell riders shadow us, but publicly they remain neutral, claiming Margaery nurses the wounded of King's Landing." "Lord Tywin?" Jon asked. "Still at Casterly Rock," Ned replied. "Hoarding gold, forging new alliances. Reports say Sellswords crossed the Sunset Sea to hire under his banners." Jon folded arms. "He'll march once we commit to the siege, hoping to trap us between Rock and Red Keep. Which means," said Davos, entering behind them, stamping snow from boots, "we must breach the city, quick, or draw Tywin off." He scratched beard. "A naval feint, perhaps. Salator San talks of taking the Arbor, tempting Tywin to defend trade routes." Viserys swept into the hall, cloak swirling. "Stannis Renly pirates. Bah. Dragonfire will settle matters by noon on the first day. Land me at the Dragon Pit. I'll proclaim my birthright before the ashes cool." "Da." Eyes turned to him. Ned's brow creased. "We will not rule by terror." Viserys' smile was thin as cracked ice. "Your north remembers Lord Stark, but the south remembers dragons. Fear kept Aegon's peace for 3 centuries. Daenerys stepped forward, voice soft yet resonant. "Fear without justice births rebellion. We do not seek a kingdom of bones." Viserys' gaze flicked to Jon, lingered on Longclaw's hilt. Whatever retort curled on his tongue died at the arrival of Maester Luwin bearing 2 scrolls, sealed with wax the hue of midnight wine. He bowed, handed them to Ned, then withdrew. Ned cracked the first seal, scanned quickly. From River Run, Robb holds Jaime still, but ugly rumors seep out. Cersei offers titles for the Kingslayer's safe return, and dissent grows among Riverlords who fear Lannister reprisals. He opened the second, his expression tightening further. Tywin sends envoys north claiming Cersei's madness has stained the Lannister name, that he seeks only peace. If we deliver his son. Ned's hand trembled, paper rustling. He threatens Sansa's life if we refuse. Silence thickened. Flames popped in the hearth. "We cannot trade the Kingslayer," Lyanna said, breaking the hush. "Oathbreakers must face judgment. Yet we cannot sacrifice Sansa," Ned whispered. Jon's stomach clenched. Arya stepped beside him, jaw set, eyes like cold steel. "We rescue her. No trades. An infiltration," Bran murmured from his circle of scrolls. "Paths yet unseen weave inside the city. If we could open a gate." Melisandre's ruby flared. "The night is dark inside those walls. I feel hunger, a lioness gnawing her own entrails. To pierce that darkness fire must enter humbly, a spark through shadow." Beric inclined his head. "A small team through the sewage outlets under the Hill of Rhaenys. The Brotherhood used those tunnels before the war." He glanced at Arya. "Quick blades, quiet steps." Daenerys considered. "Jon and I cannot vanish. Our absence would sow panic." She turned to Arya, Jorah, and Beric. Could you slip through Lannister lines and free the girl? Arya's grin flashed wolfish. If we can reach the tunnels, Sansa is coming home. Ned exhaled. Torn. Finally he placed hands on Arya's shoulders. You will not walk alone. He looked to Jorah. Guard my daughter as you would guard your queen. The plan, sketchy and desperate, took root amidst flicker of oak log flames and murmur of strategists. Supplies allotted. Secret paths traced. Countermarches, mapped to confuse Tywin's ravens. Yet before council ended, Bran lifted a parchment scrawled with star charts. The comet returns, he said, voice low. The same red sword in the sky I saw when Daenerys' dragon was born. 3 nights hence it will stand over King's Landing. Melisandre's eyes widened. Lightbringer above the city of kings. The hour of rebirth. She stared at Jon and Daenerys, as though beholding prophecy incarnate. Move with the comet, its fire shall guide hearts. Preparations consumed Winterfell like a forge fire's iron. Carpenters reinforced wheelhouses to bear siege scorpions. Glover masons fitted iron-shod mantlets. Maesters brewed wildfire antidotes from powdered pearlroot. In the Godswood, Jon trained daily with Benjen and Arya, refining quiet movement, blind strikes, while Daenerys supervised dragon armor smithied from meteoric steel, dredged centuries earlier from the shivering sea. Rhaegal accepted gilded scale plates across chest. Viserion took a lighter lattice to ease his healing wing. Drogon snarled, but allowed a ridged spine guard hammered to mimic arrowcatch fins. One evening, as red dusk stained ramparts, Jon found Viserys pacing the outer bailey, clutching a sealed letter. Snow collected on the prince's golden hair, unnoticed. Word from Pentos, he muttered, eyes fever bright. Illyrio promises ships, gold. If we abandon these northern savages and sail to Dorne, unite the realms south instead. He says the lion will never bow to wolves. Jon folded arms. And will the dead withheld by distance respect your new realm? Viserys' nostrils flared. The dead are spent, their masters slain by your lucky stroke. Now the living decide history. Jon shook his head. You saw Hardhome. Fragments of that army still roam. They will gather anew if magic or malice calls. We need unity. Viserys ripped the letter. Snow swirled through torn parchment. Unity? You unite the north around her. He jabbed southward where dragons roosted. A silver-haired usurper who hides behind a bastard wolf. He stepped close. When the throne is mine, bastards return to their kennels. Jon's hand hovered near hilt but froze. Call me what you like, he said quietly. But threaten my family again, and I'll forget diplomacy. Viserys' smile shook at its edges. He turned abruptly, stalking toward the guest keep. Jon watched him vanish through an archway, thoughts nodded. An hour later, Daenerys joined him beneath the battlements. The snow had ceased, stars peeking through tattered clouds. Jon relayed the exchange. She listened in pained silence. He's my brother, she whispered. But each day, I recognize him less. Jon squeezed her hand. Blood does not excuse betrayal. They leaned against the cold stone, watching Drogon spiral high above Winterfell's tallest tower, a black star against deeper black. Daenerys took a shaky breath. If he tries, then we act. Jon finished. Together. 3 nights later, the comet blazed anew. An arterial streak of molten ruby across northern heavens. Camps around Winterfell gasped. Children cried that dragons devoured stars. Priests knelt in snow. Arya stood atop the battlements, hair whipping in cosmic wind, and swore the red tail pointed toward Sansa. At dawn she, Jorah, Beric, Gendry, and a dozen silent sisters, disguised as merchants departed by hidden gate, ghosts slipping into the whitening world. With them rode Bran's direwolf Raven Rangers, crows trained to scout ahead and report via whispering trees. From atop the old walls Bran watched, eyes blank, skin pale, warging through their flight lines southward. When his consciousness returned, he told Jon of secret Lannister checkpoints, of wildfire dredged from cellars of city manors, moved under cloak of night. He spoke with a weight older than his years. If Cersei cannot rule, She will burn the 7 kingdoms to spite us. Jon touched Bran's shoulder, chilled by the boy's shuddering calm. We'll douse those flames, little brother. The main host marched a day later, leaving Winterfell garrisoned by old men, maids, and the dragon's younger keepers. Snow melted into rutted mud south of the neck, and spring stirred faint lily shoots despite lingering frost. Tyrell outriders joined near Maidenpool. Sir Willis Tyrell with 1,000 heavy cavalry, citing an oath to protect common folk from Lannister rapine. Skeptics whispered of hidden Reach ambition, but Jon welcomed their grain wagons and siege teams. Robb Stark's army rallied from Riverrun, crossing the Trident under fluttering direwolf banners. Jaime Lannister marched chained at Column's center, eyes hooded, beard grown wild. He greeted Jon with sardonic salute. "Another Stark bastard champion," he drawled, yet voice lacked its old swagger. Imprisonment and rumors of Cersei's madness had carved lines into his face. Jon met his gaze, neither mocking nor pitiful, and moved on. The guilt of leaving Sansa within the lion's den gnawed his sleep. Every mile south felt carved from his sister's time. Near Duskendale, scouts of the Golden Company vanished, ambushed by riders cloaked in crimson half-capes. Bodies were found arrow-riddled, tongues cut. Notes pinned to armor bore a single gold lion rampant, with the words, "Castamere remembers." Tywin's handwriting, precise as always. Jon ordered double sentries and forbade lone patrols. Viserys exploded into tirade, claiming cowardice, but Daenerys silenced him with a glance. Storm clouds massed as the allied host approached the Blackwater Rush. Flash floods had scoured the plain where Stannis once fought. Crossing took 3 days, engineers erecting pontoon bridges under watch of squadrons of Dornish scorpions. During the second night, a burst of wildfire erupted upriver, green flame painting sky. Lannister sappers had ignited hidden caches, turning water to boiling acid. 20 soldiers died in seconds. Davos cursed ghosts of Blackwater Bay. By the 4th dawn, King's Landing rose ahead, a silhouette more ruined than city. Smoke curled from half-burnt districts. Walls blackened, the domeless sept loomed bleached like a giant's skull. Yet banners still flapped red and gold along battlements, and the gold cloaks lined parapets with crossbows. Jon's breath caught at the sight of the once great capital in such condition. He pictured Sansa somewhere inside, amid stench of ash and paranoia. They camped on the fields of the Kingswood, out of bowshot. Dragons roosted upon charred remains of the dragon pit, their cries drifting like broken bells. Melisandre paced circles of chalk in her pavilion, ruby smoldering. Bran's ravens perched along siege towers, waiting silent. The comet flared over the city at twilight, arching down toward the dark mouth of the Blackwater. Fires along the walls flickered strange crimson, as if reflecting the omen. A war council assembled beneath striped pavilions. Stannis stood tall in black plate, silver stag emblazoned. Tyrells offered fresh bread and salt, refusing seats until courtesy fulfilled. Lyanna, Ned, Robb, and Jon ringed a sand table displaying cloth tokens. Wolf, dragon, sun, stag, rose. Daenerys listened as Stannis proposed a full frontal assault at dawn, his voice iron and certainty. Tyrell commanders countered with a feint at the Lion Gate, followed by a siege to starve the city. Davos advocated a naval blockade with minimal bloodshed. Lyanna pressed for time. Every hour allowed Arya's team to reach Sansa. Ned concurred, but warned delay risked Tywin's approach. Voices rose until Daenerys spoke, quiet yet carrying. "We came to liberate, not slaughter. We give the city one chance. At first light, I will fly above the Red Keep and speak with Queen Cersei. If she yields, no blood. If she refuses, we strike swiftly. Dragons breach the city, ground troops secure roads. Healers follow to treat the wounded." "No." Stannis' jaw clenched, but he bowed curtly. "I will hold my men until your parley fails." Jon added, "Our infiltration will signal from inside. A lantern atop the Tower of the Hand. 1 if Sansa secured, 2 if gates primed for opening, none if captured. We attack regardless should wildfire ignite." Agreement settled like dust after battle. Jon lingered as others departed, staring at city lights flickering in broken patterns. Daenerys touched his arm. "She will live." she whispered. Arya's blade is true. He nodded, infused by her resolve yet haunted by dread. He dared not name. Inside King's Landing's carcass, Arya stalked pitch-slick tunnels beneath the Hill of Rhaenys, torch guttering against slime-running walls. Gendry led, broad shoulders scraping brick as he pushed an iron bar through old grates. Jorah guarded rear, sword low, listening for the scurry of rats, or Lannister patrol. Their disguises as poxcart haulers had served until Gatehouse. Now stealth must suffice. They emerged into the gutted Sept's crypt level, where shattered marble angels lay decapitated, eyes blind to char-stained bones littering floor. Arya breathed charred frankincense, recalling Sansa's fondness for the Sept choir songs. Her pulse hammered. They skirted pools of candle wax hardened like melted faces, and ascended a spiral stair choked with rubble. Above, moonlight pierced fallen buttresses, painting jagged shadows. Guards passed outside, voices echoing about burned saints. Arya pressed against a cracked pillar, steadying breath. Jorah pointed west, toward the Red Keep's lower postern. They slipped across open courtyards strewn with scorched banners. A one-eyed hound sniffed at corpses, but Arya tossed dried beef. The beast trotted after treat, indifferent. Within the keep corridors, lanterns flickered under red silk drapes. The scent of vinegar and rotting lilies mixed, cheap efforts to mask plague and dead. Arya recognized the hallway to Sansa's old chambers. 2 gold cloaks outside, leaning on spears. She signaled. Gendry hefted hammer. Jorah unsheathed quietly. 3 heartbeats later, the first guard crumpled. Crossbow bolt through larynx. The second turned, mouth wide, before Arya's blade blossomed beneath his chin. She caught his spear, lowering him silent. Sansa's door opened at the noise. Her face pallid, hair haggard but eyes bright with sudden tears. Arya dashed forward, stifled sob against sister's shoulder. Jorah swept room, confirming no watchers. Sansa whispered, voice raw. Cersei leaves tomorrow. She plans to flee by the Roserwad with Joffrey, the mountain, and enough gold to raise a fresh army. Arya's grin flashed feral. Not if we cut her road. They robed Sansa in guard leathers, too large, but serviceable. Beric signaled from the window. Courtyard clear. They moved. Down kitchens reeking of sour rat stew. Through servants' alcoves, where half-starved children cowered. Out onto terrace, shadowed by the Tower of the Hand. Jorah and Gendry scaled ivy lattice. Hauling coil of rope, Beric awaited with lantern. As Arya guided Sansa across parapet, torchlight burst behind. Gold cloaks rounding corner. Steel clanged, arrows hissed. Beric yelled, drawing sword aflame with wildfire green. Gendry dropped beside, hammer spinning. Arya shoved Sansa forward, parried a spear, and danced into blur of motion. The water dancer's steps Syrio taught. When the last guard fell gurgling, lantern flared upon tower's crown. 1 long glow, then 2. Signal given. Below, the city's low drums of panic rose as dragons passed over moon. 3 dark shadows swirling like living constellations. Arya wrapped an arm around Sansa tight. Home, she whispered, and for the first time since she fled Winterfell. Sansa believed. Outside the walls, Jon watched for the twin lights. Dawn haloed ramparts, banners drooped in windless calm. Then, atop the Tower of the Hand, 2 lanterns blazed. Relief surged like thaw flood. He raised Stark war horn, one sonorous note that rippled across assembled host. Signal flags whipped. Gate ready. Ziga captains shouted, columns tightened ranks. Daenerys mounted Drogon in the hush before trumpets sound. She wore no crown, only dark riding leathers and a gorget of hammered dragonglass. Jon stepped beside, touching her stirrup. Their eyes locked, words unnecessary. Drogon launched skyward, wings churning dawn pink to storm black. Atop the barbican, Cersei Lannister emerged in gilded breastplate, hair cropped short, like a sculpted helmed lioness. Joffrey stood clutching new crossbow, eyes wild. Qyburn hovered, gaunt. The mountain loomed behind, iron mask hiding burned Lear. They looked up as Drogon's shadow eclipsed sun, and for heartbeat even the queen's pride faltered. Daenerys hovered above the Red Keep, voice magnified by beating wings. Cersei of House Lannister, you sit upon a throne of ash. Yield the city, stand trial for your crimes, and your people will be spared. Cersei's laugh cracked like dry bone. I am queen of the 7 kingdoms. I answer to none, least of all a dragon-riding whore and a bastard's bastard. She signaled. Catapults thumped. Iron pots soared, erupting green wildfire where they burst. Flames licked Drogon's belly. He roared. Pain and fury mingled. Arrows whistled upward. Daenerys banked, returning fire. Billows of orange engulfing trebuchets, walls curving molten. Defiance sealed. The assault began. Stannis rams thundered toward the mudgate. Tyrell knights galloped with lance pennants high, smashing into panicked gold cloaks. Dornish spearmen swarmed breaches left by dragon strafes. Jon charged at the head of northern infantry, Longclaw raised. Robb rode beside, gray cloak snapping. The world dissolved into din of steel. Screams, wallstones cracking. Within the Red Keep, Arya led Sansa down servants' stair hidden behind tapestry. They encountered Lannister guards retreating upward. One recognized Sansa, lunged. Arya slit throat in a blur. Sansa pressed on, eyes ablaze with stark resolve. Cersei stalked throne room strewn with cinders from collapsed ceiling. Joffrey shrieked orders, but soldiers fled in droves. Qyburn whispered to her, urging escape through secret passages where caches of wildfire lay primed. Better all burn than bend, he hissed. She hesitated, then nodded. They descended torchlit stair into dank corridors lined with green-tinged barrels. Cersei's torch sputtered. Droplets of wildfire ignited floor and sputtering tongues. Overhead, the throne room quaked. Roar of dragons rumbled like distant thunder. Cersei pressed on, eyes bright with zealotry. In the courtyard, Jon squared against the mountain. The giant knight swung greatsword, shattering shield of a Stormlander who fell screaming. Jon evaded blow. Sliced calf. Steel glanced off black plate. The mountain backhanded Jon, sending him skidding across blood-slick stones. Ghost lunged, teeth scrabbling to find a gap. The mountain kicked the direwolf, cracking ribs. Jon scrambled, fury surging. The giant advanced, raising blade. Arrow thudded into visor slit. Weirwood shaft shot by Bran from a tower window, directed by ravens. The mountain roared, helmet ringing. Jon rolled beneath guard, plunged dragonglass dagger through groin seam. Kai. Steam burst as unnatural flesh met obsidian. The mountain convulsed, dropped sword, collapsed. Jon knelt beside Ghost. The direwolf licked blood from Jon's cheek, whined but lived. Above, Tyrell banners crested battlements seized by Reachmen. Dornish horn echoed triumph. Yet flames spurted across lower city, wildfire leaking from sewers like venom. Jon's stomach twisted. If Cersei reached Undercity stores, the whole capital might detonate. He sprinted toward Red Keep inner gate as Arya and Sansa emerged. Sansa cried his name. Relief flashed. Arya gasped news. Cersei heads beneath. She'll burn it all. Jon commanded Robb to secure sisters, then charged inside with Benjen, Davos, and a cadre of Night's Watch veterans. Torchlight flickered along narrow spiral down to catacombs. Wildfire smell choked air. They found corridors lined with barrels ablaze at seams. Qyburn lay dead, throat opened by his own panic. Farther ahead, Cersei ignited fuse lines. Hair singed, muttering to herself, Joffrey sobbing behind. Jon shouted. She whirled, eyes glassy. "You will not take my throne," she hissed, brandishing torch. Jon stepped forward, blade lowered, voice calm. "This throne is finished, Cersei. There are children above. Your people. Do not be the Queen of Cinders." Her hand shook. Joffrey screamed to burn them. Benjen flanked right, Davos left. Cersei saw trap, snarled, flung torch toward nearest barrel. Jon dove, smothering flame with cloak. Benjen tackled Joffrey. Davos seized Cersei's wrist, twisting torch free. Cersei screamed, clawed. Wildfire dripped on sleeve, ignited. Flames climbed her arm. She shrieked, but refused aid, stumbling against barrel. Fire spread, she fell, green tongues consuming. Jon dragged Davos clear. Benjen hauling Joffrey, who wailed for mother, then collapsed unconscious. They stamped stray flames, rolled barrels aside, severed fuses. Minutes felt like ages before silence replaced crackle. The city above groaned but did not explode. When they emerged, dawn's full light bathed broken ramparts. Bells rang, a confused clamor turning to triumph. Dragons perched along walls. Wings mantled. Tyrell and Stark soldiers herded surrendering gold cloaks. Stannis stood by the gate, sword raised in salute as civilians streamed past, weeping into allied lines bearing bread. Daenerys landed beside Jon, eyes searching. Relief broke across her features when she saw Sansa embraced by Arya and Robb, tears of joy glimmering. She dismounted, met Jon amid rubble where melted gold of the Lion Gate ran in small rivers. They clasped hands, dirt smeared, blood flecked. "The city is yours," Jon said softly. "Ours," she corrected, gaze sweeping from freed smallfolk to dragons preening on shattered domes, to allied banners fluttering in hopeful wind. "We rebuild not as conquerors, but as stewards." He nodded, thinking of Lyanna's first vision in the Tower of Joy. A bridge between dragon and wolf. At last the bridge stood, though its stones were laid with sacrifice. High above, the red comet faded into morning, its ember tail dissolving. Yet in every heart on those scorched streets, a new light kindled. Not the false green of wildfire, nor the cold blue of dead eyes, but a steadfast flame wrought from ice and fire united, warm enough to thaw centuries of fear, bright enough to guide the realm into dawn. Ash settled over King's Landing like a second snowfall, drifting through bruised light that seeped past soot-blackened ramparts and fractured domes. Wind rattled broken shutters and flapped torn banners, but beneath the ruin a steady hum of industry grew. Hammers on iron, voices calling stone counts, the crackle of fresh cookfires in makeshift bakeries, sprung up along the street of flour. Dawn after the city's fall found every courtyard alive with rebuilding. Reach masons mixing lime in charred vats, Dornish carpenters hoisting timbers scavenged from shipwrecked galleys, northern blacksmiths reforging seized Lannister plate into nails, hinges, door rings. Smoke still rose in thin skeins, yet mingled now with aromas of stewing onions and the coarse sweetness of oatcake. In the Red Keep's shattered throne room, Jon Snow strode beneath collapsed arches, where beams of sun slanted through holes in the ceiling, illuminating motes that danced like fireflies among marble rubble. A scaffold had been erected over the Iron Throne to keep stray masonry from finishing what wildfire had begun. Even so, spalled dust sifted down over twisted swords and cracked gilt. Workers in plain linens hauled away shards of stained glass, their footsteps echoing. Jon paused at the dais, gaze lingering on the blasted chair, a ruin emblematic of the realm itself, then turned toward the council table newly placed across the hall, where Daenerys awaited. She stood in deep conversation with Sir Davos, one hand resting upon spread parchments that mapped burn-scarred districts. Her silver-white hair was tied back in a practical knot. She wore a simple sable jerkin over mail, streaked by ash, though in her eyes smoldered tireless purpose. As Jon approached, she looked up, weariness stealing none of her warmth. "How many wells uncontaminated?" she asked before greeting. Jon set his helm down, sweeping sweaty hair from brow. 3 near Cobbler's Square, 2 at Flea Bottom's northern edge. Maester Lomas says we must boil every drop for a moon's turn. And still he fears flux. Davos tapped a charcoal mark. If we rebuild the aqueduct channels from the river. Jon shook his head. Blackwater runs green 2 leagues upstream. Wildfire seep? The current must scour it first, or men will drink poison flame. He exhaled. But cisterns at Maegor's Holdfast survived. We can divert for now. A clerk hurried over with fresh scrolls. Reports of grain levies pledged by Lady Margaery. Of Dornish water wagons inbound. Daenerys initialed approvals, then fixed Jon with a searching look. How fares Ghost? He lives, heals. Jon's smile was small but true. No wolf breaks to a lion's kick. Before more could pass between them, the heavy doors at the hall's far end groaned inward, and Ned Stark entered, flanked by Robb and Prince Doran's emissary Maester Caliot. With them strode Brienne of Tarth, her breastplate dented, escorting the one-eyed prisoner Sandor Clegane in chains. The Hound glared at Broken Throne and spat. "All here," Ned said, voice echoing off cracked vaults. "We may begin." Daenerys inclined her head and moved to the long trestle freshly erected across from the Iron Throne. A deliberate symbol that rule would be forged by council, not singular seat. Around it gathered lords and captains. Stannis Baratheon, austere in black. Lyanna Mormont small yet indomitable. Sir Willis Tyrell, representing Highgarden. Mark Piper for the Riverlands. And Asha Greyjoy, unexpectedly arrived that morning under flag of truce, offering hostages and timber fleets, if her brother Theon's crimes be set before a new court of realm. Tension crackled. Soot and sweat scented the air. Jon took place beside Daenerys. Across the table sat Viserys Targaryen in golden mail polished to mirror brightness, the crown of twisted bronze that he had forged glinting upon his brow. His face was an unreadable mask of calm, yet a tick pulsed near his left eye each time counselors addressed his sister first. Ned began. "We have retaken the capital, but not the kingdom. Tywin Lannister marches from Casterly Rock with sellsword companies and half the Westerlands. Scouts say 50,000 cross the Mander. His outriders will reach Bitterbridge inside a fortnight. May I wonder?" Stannis' gauntleted fist thumped wood. "Let him come. We hold city walls, dragons in the sky." Davos cleared throat. "Dragons tire. Cruise man scorpions again. And Tywin's gold buys more across the narrow sea." Sir Willis nodded. "Lord Tyrell proposes intercept at Bitterbridge. The Reach Fields will not feed Tywin's host if we torch granaries ahead of him." Asha smirked. "Greyjoy sails can choke Redwine Straits, starve his purse." Viserys leaned forward, eyes alight. "I will ride at the van with Golden Company, break his line like Aegon at Field of Fire." Jon's voice cut across potential argument. "This throne room has seen enough arrogance. We will craft plan with head, not pride." He gestured to maps. "First, we must feed this city. Without grain the people will rise. Tywin need only wait." Willis, Davos. "Secure convoys upriver with Reach Knights. Stormlander barges. Second, rebuild river chain and southern bastions. Ensure fleet of Dragonstone anchors inside Blackwater." Daenerys added, "My dragons will patrol where walls yet stand charred. But Drogon's wing still bears scorch. He cannot fly without rest. Viserion and Rhaegal defend skies at dusk, roost by dawn. Until healed, we rely on men." Ned produced another scroll. "Ask for governance. We convene a great moot in 7 days. Delegates from each kingdom, freefolk, faith and guilds, will witness dismantling of wildfire stores. Oath of protection." He looked at Stannis. "You will preside as justiciar." Stannis' lips thinned, but he inclined head. "Justice will be measured." Robb rose. "And Sansa." Doors opened again. Arya entered, escorting Sansa, whose hair had been washed, cheeks pale but dignified. A hush fell. Sansa approached Jon and Daenerys. then turned to Ned. Father and eldest daughter embraced amid silence, broken only by the distant rumble of masonry cranes. Jon felt weight unclench inside his chest. When emotions settled, Daenerys spoke. "We need a new symbol. The Iron Throne is rust and ruin. It cannot seat just rule. I propose it be melted, recast into plowshares. Coins for widows, swords for defense, and a broad council dais where lords and small folk may stand as equals." Nender gasps, whispers. Stannis' brows knitted. Willis Tyrell smiled faintly. Viserys' face blanched. "You would destroy the throne of our ancestors." "Our ancestors forged it through terror," Daenerys answered, voice soft yet unyielding. "Let us forge something better." Viserys shot to feet. "Blasphemy. The dragon's birthright is iron and flame." He glared across table. "Your weak visions embolden wolves, flowers, krakens. Soon you'll hand crown to some bastard elected by butchers." Lyanna Mormont slapped palm flat, startling all. "Better a butcher's crown than a tyrant's." She turned to Daenerys. "Bear Island stands with the Queen." One by one other lords voiced assent. Only Viserys remained standing, fists trembling. "Then I must preserve our legacy myself." He whirled, cloak lashing, and strode from hall. His Golden Company retainers hesitated, exchanged looks, then followed. A chill traced Jon's spine. He caught Jorah's gaze. The knight nodded grimly and slid after the prince. Daenerys exhaled, emotion flickering. Jon squeezed her hand under table. "He will not harm what we build," he murmured. She managed a small nod. "We will not let him." The week passed in whirlwind of labor and negotiation. Sansa convened seamstresses to sew blankets from salvaged drapes. Arya patrolled streets with Brotherhood banners, disarming cutthroats exploiting chaos. Bran, ensconced in Maegor's highest surviving tower, forged ravens day and night, guiding search teams to trapped survivors beneath collapsed apartments. Ghost mended, prowled charred alleys to sniff out smolder pockets before they reignited. On the third night a hush spread. Rhaenys Hill glowed eerie green, wildfire vaults uncovered by diggers. Daenerys and Jon descended catacombs with maesters and pyromancers compelled under guard. They siphoned volatile slush into lead-lined flasks for disposal at sea, a grim procession lit by torchlight dancing on stone sarcophagi. Sweat beaded on every brow until last chamber stood empty. Only then did hearts resume steady beating. Meanwhile, ravens brought tidings from Riverlands. Edmure Tully freed River Run of lingering Lannister garrison. Ser Brynden Blackfish rode to Harry Tywin's flank. From the Vale came word that young Lord Robert's regents pledged neutrality, but opened Gulltown to Tyrell grain flotillas. Dorne's caravans arrived bearing citrus, wine, and a cadre of Sunspear engineers expert in aqueduct craft. The city breathed easier. But clouds amassed to west. Tywin's host had reached sowing fields, levees swelling. Reports of Sellswords under a Pentoshi prince, 20,000 spears, shadowed his rear. Scouts whispered of dark armored slingers bearing wyvern sigil not seen before. Jon studied every parchment, dread creeping. Viserys' Golden Company detachments had abandoned King's Landing 2 nights prior, their tents left empty. Jorah returned alone, his face ashen. "He plans to join Tywin," Jorah said in quiet fury. "Claims your Kupiu broke his claim. He will reclaim throne by any means." He placed a torn scrap bearing Viserys' hand. "Witness the true dragon at Bitterbridge." Daenerys read, pain and anger warring. "He seeks his own field of fire," she whispered. Ned looked to Jon. "We must intercept." Jon frowned. "If we ride to Bitterbridge, we leave city vulnerable to saboteurs. Could be ploy to thin our strength." Stannis spoke. "Not ploy." Scouts confirmed Golden Company heading west from Duskendale. Willis Tyrell said, "Bitterbridge is my demesne. My knights know marshes. We can harry Viserys before he links with Tywin." "Nandero." Jon clasped his arm. "Go swiftly. Break supply lines, not lives if possible. We wish no brother's blood on roses. Willis bowed. The rose bears thorns only to defend. He departed that hour with 700 green-cloaked riders. The great moot convened atop Aegon's Hill at week's end, in the Dragon Pit Plaza where stone vaults still stood though roof lay cave. A dais of plain cedar had been erected. Behind it Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion crouched like living mountains, armor plates glinting. Small folk thronged, a sea of patched cloaks and tear-streaked faces. Guildmasters, septons, silent sisters, and maesters formed inner ring. Lords stood behind, banners lowered. The plinth where the Iron Throne had once loomed now bore a molten slag block, a silent testament to endings. Daenerys stepped upon platform in plain wool surcoat belted with rawhide. Jon at her side wore stark gray trimmed in black dragon scale. Wind-tugged hair carried scent of soot and salt. She raised hand. Hush rippled outward. "People of Westeros," she began, voice ringing clear, "we gather not to crown conqueror, but to kindle hope. Yesterday's throne is ash. Let us craft tomorrow on firmer stone. Justice, mercy, common cause." She gestured to Ned, who read articles drafted by council. A provisional compact of realms establishing an assembly of lords and commons. Appointment of regional wardens elected by vassals. Pledge to abolish forced child marriages and trial by combat. Decree of relief funds for fire victims from melted crown gold. Cheers followed each. When Ned finished, Stannis stepped forward bearing a long sword-heated cherry-red embrasier. "The old kings ruled by iron fear," he intoned. "We temper fear with duty." He plunged blade into the throne's molten slag. Sparks hissed into air. Guildsmiths approached, scooping spoonfuls into molds shaped as coins, plowshares, nails. The crowd gasped as molten metal flowed from symbol of oppression into vessels of renewal. Daenerys spoke again. "One coin will be sent to every orphan of this war. One nail to every builder. One plowshare to every farmer's guild." Tears shone on many cheeks. Jon then addressed. "Winter's darkness has lifted, but shadows linger. We vow defense against what lies beyond walls or seas. United, wolf and dragon, human and free folk, we will guard one another." Shouts of approval rolled like thunder beneath cracked dome. Yet at climax, a horn blast shattered celebration. A raven dived, alighting on Bran's arm near dais. His eyes rolled white. When they returned, he spoke in voice not wholly his own. "Tywin moves, 2 days east of Bitterbridge. Viserys meets him at dawn. Their combined host will march within the week." Panic murmured. Daenerys straightened, pupils narrowing. "Then we ride with sunrise." She turned to crowd. "Your queen will defend this city, but first must ensure peace beyond its walls." She laid hand on Jon's. "My king of winter will rule in my stead until we return, with Lord Eddard as hand." Gasps, but cheers erupted. People bowed. Lords knelt. Jon felt weight settle, heavy yet fitting. That night, as torches flickered along half-rebuilt avenues, Jon and Daenerys stood atop a balcony overlooking Blackwater's black mirror. Moonlight silvered her hair. Stars glinted off his new gorget bearing entwined wolf and dragon. "Will you return?" he asked softly. "I must," she said. "For you, for realm. Dragons were born to ride storm's edge. But promise me, if I fall, continue the compact." He embraced her, feeling heartbeats align. "We both return," he swore. Dawn painted sky blush when Daenerys mounted Drogon beyond River Gate, flanked by Rhaegal and Viserion, each bearing 15 unsullied archers harnessed to throw glass-tipped javelins. Stannis led column of heavy infantry. Asha Greyjoy rode with spearlines, her kraken banners snapping. Lyanna Mormont insisted on marching though Tower Maesters fretted over her healing leg. The host filed toward Roserad, dust pillars trailing beneath rising sun. Jon watched from ramparts until banners dwindled. Then he turned to tasks. Reorganize watch rotations, instruct engineers to reinforce inner walls, oversee ration distribution. Sansa joined him, reopening royal library as refuge where scribes recorded lost inheritances. Arya drilled new city guard, mixing northern veterans with former gold cloaks vetted for loyalty. 3 days passed like years. Reports dribbled. Willis riders skirmished Golden Company in meadows of Bitterbridge. Viserys himself unhorsed Sir Humphrey Beesbury, trumpeting victory. Yet Tywin's main force remained distant, waiting. Jon studied maps nightly, sense of unease gnawing. Tywin seldom waited without stratagem. On the fourth dawn, Bran burst into council chamber, cheeks bloodless. Ravens see sails, black hulls bearing wyvern sigil, south coast near Storm's End. New mercenary fleet hired by Tywin. If they breach Blackwater, city trap. Mentor or. Jon's pulse quickened. We've no fleet enough to counter. He paced. Unless. He glanced to Asha Greyjoy's cadet, recently assigned harbor duties. Signal Pike volunteers. How many longships off Dragonstone? 32, the woman said. Not counting prize galleys captured. Arm them with casks of wildfire we purified. Chain grapple heads. Night raid. Torch the mercenary fleet before Blackwater mouth. Maester Lomis paled. Wildfire on water again? Jon met his gaze. Better our green fire at sea than Tywin's in houses. He stepped to window where city lights twinkled. Prepare barrels. I will sail. Sansa gripped his arm. You vowed to protect city inside walls. I protect it where threat lies. He turned to Brienne. You command gates until dawn. If fleet slips through, flush channels, flood lower city to smother flames. She nodded resolute. That evening gale swept from east, whipping cables along wharfs. Jon boarded the Black Kraken, flagship under Asha's banner Tui. Greyjoy reavers eyed him warily, but respected resolve. Holds brimmed with wildfire casks, sealed in clay. Crew dipped arrowheads in pitch, smeared mast poles to catch no spark. Under moonless sky, the longships rode silent past Dragonstow's shadow, and out into open sea. Cold spray stung. Wind carried briny tang, and faint clank of distant chains. Before dawn, pale flicker revealed enemy fleet. 30 massive cog-hulled transports ringed by lighter escort galleys, anchored beyond Storm's End's ruined seawall. Lanterns glimmered along rigging. Jon's heart hammered. He signaled. Fan-shape approach. Greyjoy ships glided like wolves on black ice, oars muffled in sea sleeves. When within arrow flight, archers lit slow fuses on clay casks, hoisted them into catapults rigged between prow struts. At Jon's word, loosed. Green streaks arced, fell among clustered cogs. A moment's hush, then thunder blooms of jade-white fire swallowed masts, roared across water in hungry sheets. Timbers shrieked. Men screamed. Fire jumped like contagion ship to ship. Enemy galleys unfurled sails to flee. Greyjoy longships darted, grapnels tearing canvas, axes splintering decks. One wyvern flagship swung catapults, hurling stones. Asha's prow rammed its flank. Shattering planks. Jon led boarding surge, Longclaw carving through mercenaries. Wildfire reflection painted battle eerie emerald. An hour later, ocean burned, dotted by smoking hulks. Survivors clung to driftwood as currents carried them south. Jon leaned on rail, chest heaving, face smeared by soot and salt, heart pounding victory, yet dread persisted. Tywin's stratagem measured. This fleet merely blade, not spear. But with sea secured, reinforcing grain could flow. They returned to city hailed by cheers along quays. Jon disembarked, bones aching, and learned fresh tidings. Daenerys' host met Viserys at Bitterbridge and routed Golden Company. Willis cavalry performed feigned retreat, trapped Sellswords in bog. Dragonfire sealed defeat, yet Tywin still marched. Slower now, leaving scorched fields but avoiding pitched battle. 2 nights later, a secret raven arrived, sealed with green rows of high garden. It bore a single line. Tywin turns north, Tumbledown Keep. Seeks cross Kingwood to bypass city. Jon summoned war council at once. If Tywin circled through woods, he could strike city's sparsely fortified northern wall, while main host away. Brienne advised dispatching reserve, but numbers thin. Bran suggested forest defenses using terrain. Sansa spoke. Hold a parley, offer Tywin peace. Ned shook head. He will not speak while vengeance burns. Jon resolved. I ride north with 2,000. We delay his crossing until Daenerys returns. That dawn he left Sansa in charge, Arya her sword. Ghost loped ahead, ribs still bandaged. They took woodland tracks, racing between stands of oak where autumn ghosted leaves though it was spring. On third day they sighted fires of Tywin's vast encampment by a ruined tower near Kingswood's edge. Jon studied from ridge, banners of red lion, gold sunburst of Clegane retainers, and shock, wyvern of mercenaries who survived sea inferno, fewer but fierce. At central pavilion Tywin parleyed with visories. The prince's armor dented, eyes feverish. Jon's throat tightened. Brother against sister again. Night fell. Jon called council beneath silent oaks. Benjen, Davos, and Beric proposed raiding supply wagons, then falling back to lure Tywin forward into narrow defile. Bran's ravens scouted. Steep ravines east perfect for ambush. Plan set. Before dawn rangers slipped among pickets, cutting mule traces, spooking horses, torching grain. Horns blared. Chaos erupted. Tywin's outriders gave chase into woods where stark spear hedges waited. Barrages of arrows from tree platforms decimated cavalry. Jon led charge on foot, striking flank lines, sowing confusion. Viserys, enraged, pressed forward with elite mercenaries, seeking banner of wolf. He found Jon near a stream where moonlight glinted on armor. Traitor, he hissed. Kneel to your king. Jon raised visor. Your sister is my queen, your people my charge. Lay down arms. Viserys screeched and lunged. Their swords clashed. Sparks sprang. Jon parried feverish blows, feeling Prince's desperation. In swirl of steel Viserys slipped, foot in mud, and Jon's pommel struck helm, tumbling him. As Jon pressed tip to breastplate, golden lions crashed through brush, house guards shielding Prince, forcing Jon back. Benjen's horn sounded retreat. Tywin's main line advanced. Stark forces melted into forest, foxlight flickering. Supply fields blazed. Tywin lost food for days, but army marched still. Jon regrouped at ravine. Heart heavy. Viserys lived. Tywin pushed. He sent Raven to Daenerys. Enemy within 1 day of city. Return. King's Landing braced. Fields outside walls burned to deny forage. Inner districts rationed. Sansa oversaw evacuation of children to Dragon Pit catacombs. Arya supervised Archer towers. Every arrowhead tipped in obsidian shards still left from war with dead. Bran's ravens perched along walls, ready to dive with flaming pitchpots. At dusk horns on southern rampart rang. Shapes on horizon. Dragons. Daenerys returned, wings catching dying light, host marching behind. Relief surged. Yet Tywin's banners appeared northwest, dust cloud preceding. Night War Council. Daenerys, Jon newly returned. Lords ringed map by candlelight. Davos spoke. Tywin cannot breach walls fast. Hell starve city while his fleet once burned rebuilds at Tarth. Willis proposed field engagement south to push him back. Stannis argued hold inside, drag with attrition. Ned cautioned. Our people suffer. Another siege breaks covenant we forged. Benda. Jon suggested ruse. Open western gate. Feign sally, then withdraw. Drawing Tywin into half-ruined district pre-laced with traps, collapsing walls, greased streets, hidden wildfire charges to corral lion host, then dragons strike overhead. Risky. Collateral. Daenerys shook head. No wildfire in streets again. She paced, then spoke. I will parley Tywin in his camp, Offer terms. Murmurs. Dangerous. Jon stepped beside. I ride too. Before dawn they rode with small escort under white flag. Mist clung to burned stubble. Owl hoots echoed. Tywin's camp bristled with scorpions, yet honor held. They were escorted to Lord's pavilion. Within, Tywin sat in polished steel, golden cloak draped, eyes hard coins. Beside him Viserys in battered mail. Qyburn's successor, a gaunt maester, hovered. Daenerys, inclined head. Lord Tywin, enough blood has soaked these fields. Join our compact. The Westerlands shall keep their minds, you your seat. If you bend knee and adopt reforms. Tywin sipped wine. You ask a lion to share cage with sheep. I prefer to rule, not serve. Daenerys met gaze. Your rule forged rubble. Choose peace. Viserys leaned forward. Peace with pretenders? Sister, stand with me. Together we seize rock, then all 7 kingdoms. Her stare cut him. I stand with the living. Stand with us, brother. Viserys' eyes flashed hatred. Tywin raised hand. Enough. He addressed Daenerys. I propose alternative. Withdraw north of Neck. The south will heal under Lannister gold. Wolves may keep snows. Dragons sail east. Rule Slaver's Bay. He smiled thinly. Refuse, and I release plague across your city. Pestilence cultured by my maesters. Your walls will not bar disease. Jon's blood chilled. Daenerys' voice dropped icy. You would slaughter innocents who survived wildfire? Innocents are coin of war, Tywin said. Spend them or lose. Daenerys breathed slow, rage simmering. If you unleash plague, dragons will scour every keep from Casey to Banefort. Your name will die. Tywin's smile held. Lannister legacy already stained. I have little left to lose. Jon sensed futility. He guided Daenerys away, but Viserys blocked exit. Yield now, brother, Jon murmured. Viserys drew dagger, but Jorah, hidden among guards, disarmed him in blink. With glare Tywin motioned release. They returned to city. Within council chamber Daenerys briefed lords. Horror spread. Bran whispered of ravens sighting strange casks in Tywin's wagons, tended by plague mask healers. Panic threatened. Sansa steadied voice. We cannot let him near walls. Arya struck table. Assassinate him. Stannis agreed. Jon weighed. Infiltration possible with Bran's warging, Arya's stealth. But Tywin guarded. Then Bran's eyes glazed. Vision overtook. When he returned he spoke. Old paths under Tumbledown Keep led to Tywin's war council. Caverns from ancient Kingswood smugglers. I can guide. Plan formed swift. Arya, Davos, Gendry, and Sandor Clegane. Hound freed to redeem. Slip through woods, enter caverns, capture Tywin or destroy plague stores. Jon insisted join. Daenerys refused. City needs king. He relented. Night before mission Jon found Daenerys atop Maegor's tower, staring at stars. She confessed fear. If Tywin releases plague, I must turn dragons on his host, burn sickness before wind spreads. Thousands will die. Tears glistened. Jon held her. We prevent plague. They kissed beneath silent constellations. The strike force left before moonset, Bran warging Raven ahead. They reached Tumbledown at dawn fog, slipped into vine-choked fissure. Tunnels reeked damp. Torchlight danced on moss-slick walls. Arya led, silent as nightcat, blade needle gleaming. Davos carried smoke bombs. Sandor hefted cudgel. They emerged behind canvas of command tent. Tat. Voices. Tywin. Viserys, sellsword captains. Plague casks stacked against oak chest. Green sigils. Arya crept, slitting throat of lone guard. Signal. Davos hurled smoke pots. Blaze of choking white filled tent. Chaos. Sandor roared, smashing support poles. Canvas collapsed. Arya darted through fumes, blade to Tywin's thigh, hamstringing him. He fell, shocked. Viserys stumbled, coughing. Gendry toppled plague cask cart, rolling barrels down slope into ravine choked with tar pits Bran had foreseen. Arya ignited pitch with oil-soaked rag. Tar pit roared, incinerating casks. Disease dead. But Viserys fled on horse. Sandor pursued, tackled mount. Both crashed. Viserys slashed wildly, opened Sandor's cheek. Arya joined, commanding him yield. He shrieked, rushed, needle flashed, pierced heart. Viserys' eyes widened in disbelief. He collapsed, murmuring, "Not fire," and died. Tywin bound was dragged from smoke. Davos pressed cloth to wound. Horns blared. Lannister guard converged but hesitated, seeing Lion Lord captive. Arya stood over Viserys' body, face stone. Sandor spat blood, muttered, "Stupid boy." Dawn's sun rose on red field. Negotiations swift. Without Tywin or Prince, Sellsword's accepted coin to depart. Westerland's knights swore fealty for leniency. Greyjoy scouts sped word to city. Dragons soared to meet horizon but found no foes. In King's Landing Square, Tywin Lannister faced trial. Stannis presiding, Council of Realms witnessing. He admitted plots, claimed necessity for order. Daenerys condemned him to lifetime servitude, rebuilding orphan hospitals he sought to plague. Chain of iron replaced golden cloak. Viserys lay entombed within Dragon Pit crypt. Daenerys wept, though tears mingled grief and relief. Jon held her after mourners left. Weeks turned to moons. Grain silos filled. Wells flowed clear. Gun pact ratified. Assembly convened monthly. The molten throne's iron became first plow, displayed in plaza with inscription, "From war, bread." Under spring sun children played in restored gardens where ash once lay. Sansa organized schools teaching letters and numbers to gutter orphans. Arya led watch of the Seven Gates, a guard promoting merit over birth. Bran mapped lie lines of Weirwood, opening new raven paths for realm-wide warning network. Davos sailed to Bravo securing loans for aqueduct. Willis Tyrell and Asha Greyjoy negotiated trade pact, reached grain for ironborn timber. Dornish engineers raised sun-mirrored water towers. One evening midsummer, Daenerys felt faint on city walk. Maester Lomis, after discreet examination, announced quietly to Jon, "Hair Grace bears child." Joy like sunrise flooded him. On first day of Harvest Festival, assembly gathered in Dragon Pit to witness wolves and dragons. Pledge next era. Jon addressed crowd. "Winter taught us we survive together. The dead broke on living united. Thrones crumble, people endure. Let this child," he touched Daenerys' rounding belly, "be born into realm chosen by all, guided by counsel, defended by honor." Cheers thundered. Drogon roared above, joined by Rhaegal and Viserion spiraling sunlit thermals. Lyanna Stark, hair silvered at temples, clasped grandson Robb's arm, watching proud. Ned smiled, tears bright. Sansa held scroll of new laws. Arya winked from tower perch. Bran closed eyes, seeing ravens wheel over green fields thriving. Beyond walls, orchards ripened, vineyards budded. Fishermen cast nets into unpoisoned river. Along roserade traders passed unmolested. Bakers, smiths, singers carrying tales of ice and fire reconciled. In God's wood of King's Landing, a young weirwood sapling took root. The first planted south in centuries, branches entwined with dragon-shaped iron trellis. Beneath it, Jon and Daenerys sat at dusk, hands clasped over her stomach, listening to whisper of leaves. "Peace feels fragile," she murmured. "All things living are," Jon said. "But we tend them, they grow." She rested head on his shoulder. Fireflies winked among reeds. Distant bells told shift change for harbor watch. City breathed like vast beasts slumbering peaceful for once. Jon remembered his mother's tower. Vows whispered over newborn. Prophecy of bridge. He gazed at Daenerys. Wife, queen. And felt song of ice and fire no longer discordant, but harmony binding realms. Stars ignited overhead, mirrored by lamplight in streets below. Small lights countless, yet together bright enough to keep darkness at bay. And so the night unfolded gentle, promising dawns yet unnumbered. Under rain not of fear, but hope fashioned in hearts of those who dared dream beyond the Iron Throne's shadow. A cool dawn mist clung to the new orchards outside King's Landing, feathering the tidy rows of sapling apple and pear with silver. The trees, gifts from high garden nurseries, had taken root in soil cleared of char and salted grief, their slender branches already pregnant with fist-sized green fruit. Bees circled, heavy with early pollen, dew dripped from leaves, pattering into freshly raked furrows. Through the haze a lone horse picked its careful way, hooves crushing damp grass in muffled rhythm. Jon Snow reined in at the verge of the first row, and let Ghost bound ahead. The direwolf's white coat Ghost pale against the lusher greens, returning to the Crownlands. Jon drew a deep breath. Somewhere behind him, King's Landing stirred to life. Hammers on scaffold, bells from the modest sept that had risen next to the shattered ruin of Baelor's. The clatter of a fish seller's cart on cobbles. These sounds of rebuilding soothed him more than any minstrel tune. They meant the kingdom still breathed. He dismounted near a cedar post where a carpentered plaque read, "First Fruit Grove in memory of those lost to fire." Hammered below were 100 simple names. Small folk and soldiers alike. Jon traced one calloused fingertip over the etching of Palla, the washerwoman who had died guiding children out of a burning alley. He closed his eyes, honoring her, in the quiet. Ghost headed back, muzzle wet from lapping rainwater pooled in wheel ruts. The wolf bumped Jon's thigh, an impatient prod that reminded him why he'd ridden out before sunrise. Today marked 3 moons since Tywin's trial, 2 months since Viserys' body had been laid to rest in the Dragon Pit vaults. With war's smoke cleared, the city had turned to celebration. The harvest revels would begin at dusk, culminating in the presentation of the first forged coin, nail, and plowshare from the molten throne. Jon had duties, addresses to memorize, lords to greet. But before he donned the weight of titles, he needed the hush of dawn. He swung back into the saddle and guided his horse along the western perimeter, inspecting irrigation ditches the Dornish engineers had cut. Channels glimmered with clean water piped from new viaducts, evidence of debt he owed Prince Doran's quiet cunning. Jon made mental note to send thanks. Barrels of North brewed ale perhaps, or the first wheel of white knife cheese. At field's far end rose a low earthen rampart crowned by fresh-cut stakes. The outer defense line. Guards in lacquered half-plate lounged at the watchpost, saluting as their king approached. Jon reined up. "Any movement on the Wendwood Road?" he asked. The sergeant shook her head. "Only merchants, your grace. Ironborn longships keep the coast clear." Jon nodded approval. Asha Greyjoy's cooperative streak had surprised many, but her raiders seemed content to collect tolls from pirates rather than shatter alliances. A flutter overhead drew Jon's gaze. A raven, white tag glinting on its foot, swooped toward the city. Bran's network, always awake. Jon smiled faintly and turned back toward the gates. He returned to the Red Keep by mid-morning, leading Ghost through Baelor's Gate, where masons still patched arrow scars. Street children paused their play to wave wooden direwolves. Market vendors called hello. Jon answered each with quick nods, heart swelled by small ordinary courtesies, once scarce as spring water. Inside the keep, the corridors smelled of beeswax and new rushes. Sansa's influence showed in every polished banister, every tapestry restored or re-loomed by guild looms she funded from Lannister reparations. Jon found her in the solar, bent over bolts of Taroshi silk, consulting with toymakers about festival banners. She greeted him with a kiss on the cheek, her pregnancy just beginning to round beneath a dove-gray gown. Robb's child, he thought with warmth. Robb himself had ridden north last month to oversee resettlement along the Trident. But he had left Sansa here, at her request, trusting castle walls and her own indomitable spirit. "How fares the Grove?" she asked, quill poised to sign a requisition. "Strong," Jon replied, accepting a honey cake from the tray she nudged toward him. You'll have fruit tarts by next summer." Her eyes sparkled. "We will need them. The city's appetite grows daily." She set the quill, sobering. Daenerys wrote from the neck. "She expects to arrive by dusk." Relief washed through him. Swift and bright, Daenerys had spent the last 2 weeks touring holdfasts ravaged by Winter's army, dispensing grain and pardons. He yearned for her presence the way parched land craved rain, though letters, often smudged with campfire ash, had bridged the distance. Sansa studied his face, reading thoughts. "Go. Change that tunic first. You smell of field mud." She shooed him with fond exasperation. Jon laughed and retreated. In his chambers he bathed quickly. Basin water warmed by the new piped system Daenerys had ordered, and donned doublet of dark green trimmed with silver thread. He clasped the wolf and dragon cloak Lyanna Mormont had commissioned, and felt oddly regal despite himself. He had just fastened his sword belt when footsteps approached. Bran rolled in, wheelchair pushed by Mira Reed. The boy, no, young man now, Jon corrected, wore robes of slate blue embroidered with symbols older than the faith. His gray eyes seemed to glow, though vision no longer resided solely in them. "Good morning, brother," Bran greeted, voice serene. "I dreamed you among the orchard leaves at dawn." Jon smiled. "Then your green seeing still surpasses Maester Lomas Rooster." Bran's lips quirked. "I came to give warning." Riders approach from the southeast, banners of House Coherys and Celtigar united. They seek audience at the revels. Old Dragonstone vassals, Jon mused, likely wishing to pledge. Bran's gaze drifted, as if listening to distant song. They carry debt as well. Coherys owes Goldcloak's pension. Your leniency could secure men for the city watch. Ben Troll. I'll remember. Jon clasped Bran's hand in farewell. By late afternoon the city thronged. The new main square, once the ash-choked stretch before the melted throne, had been swept clean and garlanded with ribbons dyed Reach red and Tyrell gold, northern gray and Arran sky blue. Long tables held trenchers of spiced rabbit, oat bread flecked with raisins, casks of arbor white and Dornish strong wine. Musicians tuned flutes. Children wearing paper crowns chased one another round cartwheels. Jon stood upon the cedar dais with Sansa, Bran, Arya in unadorned leathers, and Ned Stark tall as any tower, silver in his beard. Beside Ned waited Stannis, expression grave even on festival day. Behind them rose the bronze treasury scales, the set salvaged from the small council's vault, now symbol of balanced realms. As the sun hovered over western rooftops, horns announced Daenerys Stormborn. 3 distant shapes materialized beyond dragon pit remnants, dragons gliding low, their shadows huge upon outer walls. Crowd voices hushed, then built to roar as Drogon descended first, his armored breastplate catching late light in a fiery burst. He landed on the new stone perch timed precisely to hold his weight. Rhaegal and Viserion alighted beside. Daenerys dismounted, aided gently by Missandei. The queen's gown was simple, woven of winter-white wool cinched by a belt of silver leaves, yet she wore it with a sovereignty no jewels could match. Her hair, half loosed, half braided with small dragon bone beads, framed cheeks pinked by wind. She smiled when she saw Jon, something soft and unguarded, and the world shrank to the space between them. He descended the steps, meeting her at Banner's edge. Their fingers intertwined, and for a heartbeat, the festival quieted into reverent hush, as if realm itself acknowledged their union again. Daenerys squeezed his hand, then faced the waiting square. "My friends," she began, voice lifting clear. "Tonight we celebrate not victory of sword, but harvest of peace. These dragons behind me were born in fire, yet they stand gentle because you welcomed change. These walls were scarred, yet they stand proud because you labored. We have melted a throne. Now let us forge a future." Then Derawan Chow. On cue, Ned stepped forward with a small wooden chest. He opened it, revealing 3 objects: a bright steel nail, a coin stamped with entwined direwolf and dragon, and a crescent-shaped plowshare polished mirror clean. Sansa lifted the nail high, its point glinting. Arya flipped the coin to a cheering child in the front row. Stannis presented the plowshare to a farmer who knelt awestruck before the dais. Then bells rang, and tables broke into revel. Jon and Daenerys moved among the people. No procession. Simply hands shaking hands. A baker pressed honey-glazed buns into their palms. Greybeard fishermen toasted them with barley ale. Little Ellery Tyrell clambered up Daenerys' gown to feel the dragon-bone beads. The queen crouched, laughing, securing the bead into the girl's curls. After twilight burgundy began to seep into the sky, torches were lit across rooftops, forming vast constellations. Minstrels launched into the last of the giants, joined by deep Dornish drums and piping from the Vale. Couples danced in swirling color. Jon stole Daenerys away behind a vine-draped archway overlooking the Blackwater. Lanterns bobbed on water, boats of mourning sent by small folk for lost loved ones, each candle a promise. Together, they watched one barge drift, candlelight glowing like tiny suns until swallowed by darkness. "Hard to think a year ago this river burned green," Daenerys murmured. "Harder to think we survived it," Jon answered. She smiled sidelong. "We are stubborn." They spoke then of Bran's impending journey north to teach Greenseer lore at the Isle of Faces, of Arya's planned voyage with Gendry to explore ruins along Summer Sea, of Sansa's proposal to host an annual fair exchanging crafts from every region, her dream of mages from Qarth meeting Winterfell weavers. Daenerys shared news. In the Neck, Mira Reed's kin found rare swamp herbs to ease childbirth. The baby inside her, she said, kicked when Maester Frenner sang old Rhoynar lullabies. Jon pressed his palm to the curve beneath her belt. A gentle movement answered. His eyes stung with wonder. "A shaker already," he whispered. "A dragon wolf." She agreed, voice trembling with joy. Footsteps approached. Ned. He joined them, leaning against parapet. The lines of worry across his brow softened. "It is good to hear the city laugh again." He gazed at lanterns. "Your child will grow among stories of healing, not of swords." "That is our hope," Jon said. Ned turned to Daenerys. "Lyanna would have liked you." Her breath caught. "I would have liked to know her." Ned nodded once, eyes reflecting torch glow. "You honor her promise." A gong sounded in distance. Signal for an event at the Dragon Pit Plaza. Jon excused himself to fetch wine. Ned offered Daenerys his arm, escorting her back. Jon crossed the square when Ghost emerged from crowd. Hackles raised. The direwolf jogged purposefully toward the east alley. Jon frowned, following. Ghost halted before a scrawny boy crouched by a crate, clutching a satchel. One of Bran's messenger ravens perched on the boy's shoulder, tag dangling. Tears streaked the child's soot-grimed face. Jon knelt. "Easy. What's wrong?" The boy held out a ragged parchment. "For the king. Urgent." He sniffled. "They killed my da at Bitterbridge. I carried Raven from the woods." Jon unfolded note, candle flame flickering over scrawl he recognized as Davos. Sighting. Remnants of White Walker host stirring beyond last hearth. Wilding scouts report Ice Whites obey new master unknown. Benjen requests Dragonfire or Valyrian blades. Send aid swift. Moon by moon we lose ground. Jon's heart lurched. The dead again? He steadied breath. This threat smaller, perhaps, yet seeds of wider horror. He thanked the boy, handing him coin. Then he strode back to dais. Daenerys had taken seat, palm on belly, listening to a septus flute. Jon eased beside her, whispering of the raven. Her features tightened, but did not pale. "We prepared for shadows," she said quietly. "We faced them." He realized then that peace, like orchard saplings, demanded constant tending. The realm was no finished tapestry but cloth on the loom, threads ever at risk of snarl or cut. Yet as Daenerys rose with him to summon Bran and Stannis for counsel, Jon also understood they were no longer weavers alone. All those gathered, lords, farmers, smiths, children, gripped the shuttle now. A hush fell over Square as horns called for attention. The final ceremony of the night. Sansa lit a great pyre of fragrant cedar at Plaza's heart, its flames dancing high. One by one, revelers stepped forward to toss into the blaze tokens of sorrow. Broken swords, shards of burned pottery, charred roof beams. The fire consumed pain, sparks spiraling into star-sprinkled velvet. Jon approached last, cradling a single twisted spike of the iron throne that the smiths had missed. He held it aloft, voice clear enough that even the farthest corners of crowd heard. "Let this be the last tooth of a dead dragon," he declared. "May our children know its shape only through songs that remind them what we left behind." He cast the spike into flames, orange reflected in thousands of eyes. Behind him, Daenerys' face glowed with hope and resolve. Far above, Drogon unfurled wings and loosed a roar. Not of rage, but of exultation, answered by Rhaegal and Viserion in harmony. Their echoes rolled over city and fields and orchards beyond, a benediction. In that resonance Jon felt the road ahead. Journeys north, councils of harvest, new threats creeping, yes, but also a steady heartbeat of a realm healing, stronger with each trial. He reached for Daenerys' hand, and together they watched the fire burn, sparks ascending like souls released to stars, lighting the path they would walk, ice and firebound, forging dawn after dawn.